Boker Tov. Hi, good morning. All right, so this is our last of the Deuteronomy readings. Oh, come on, you know what? The numbers have dwindled again. I should take a picture on day one and say, who makes it to the end? Give you like a certificate or something. And it's not about the readings. I know it's about waking up and getting going because it's exhausting to have this much fun. You guys didn't warm up and practice for this. You just said, I'm going to go spend 8 days of fun. Oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this. All right. So what we're going to do today is, this is the last reading. We're going to go from chapter 29 to the end of the book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy. I've got 11 readings. I've got Rabbi Tom and Randall down there, and the 9 up here. We're perfect. Okay, so we have all the readers we need. There'll be 11 of them. And so let's just go ahead and start as we do with some quick announcements. Okay, so I will do this again in the break in between the readings and the discussion. Okay, so for those of you that are on right now, so what we're going to do is we're going to have some quick announcements. We're going to read the Torah portions, or I should say the book of Deuteronomy readings here, and then we're going to have a quick break, remind the announcements again, and then we're going to discuss what we read. Okay, so you may want to have a pen, paper, pencil, whatever, something to make notes with. Okay, some of you are typing it into your phones or your tablets, whatever it's going to take, so that if you have something you want to ask about or make a comment about when we're done, you'll know what you're looking at and you'll remember what you wanted to do. Okay, for this afternoon, just so that you're aware, for this afternoon, during the, well, let me just announce it. So today in the afternoon, we're going to go up to the challenge part 2 for this week, all right? And then we're going to have our dance class. And during the dance class, I also have a couple of people that have signed up for counseling. I did add a few counseling sessions, so if you signed up for that, please be here in the Ark at 4 o'clock, 4:20 or 4:40, whichever you signed up for. Okay. So in the afternoon, this is for the parents, and I don't know if we have that many parents in here right now, but for the parents, Katan A and Gadol B. Katan A and Gadol B will meet at the Ark right here at 1:15, I think it says. Okay, 1:15 for activities. Okay, they're going to meet here. And then the Katan B and Gadol A at 1:30 will meet at IV5. Well, Katan B at IV5, Gadol A at IV3. Okay, Katan A, Gadol B here. Katan B, IV5, Gadol A, IV3. All right? All classes will be delivered at 5:30 at the cafeteria where we've been doing that, okay? By where the shuttle stops. All right? All right, let's see. I think that's going to cover it for that. All right, so then a couple of more things, a reminder. So tomorrow is our last day. It's the holy day, Shemini Atzar. So today is actually the last day of Sukkot. Oh. See, but that's why we added, I don't know, we added, but that's why Yahweh knew we'd want to stay longer. He gave us one more day. We call it the day of the 8th day assembly. It's the day where the people are like, well, can we have one more? I don't want to go home yet. Okay? And we have the YMTY program in the morning where you'll get to see the presentations of your children, what they've been doing all week. And then we have Holy Day services in the afternoon. And then after supper, it's break it all down, pack it all up, because in the morning we have to be out of here by 10 a.m., okay? That's the fastest we've had to be off of property, so I just want to remind you that they need to get the rooms emptied so that they can get them set up for the next group coming in, because they have a lot of groups always coming into place. All right, so that should cover it for the announcements. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let me get the book set up here. Okay, we're beginning in Deuteronomy chapter 29. And we're going to go all the way through the end of 34. Okay. I'm going to call up each person to read, and I'll recite a traditional blessing over each one. I'll tell them what verses they're going to read, and then they'll go ahead and read it. Okay, we begin with Trey. Now, Trey used to be a fixture in that first chair. When he first was told he was old enough and allowed to read, he got in that first chair. Even when he was in the Gadol class, he would be late to class. Come here, do the reading, and then run to class. So we're excited to have Trey back here as the first reader. And here we go. Actually, let me put this. Okay, here we go. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Trey, who's come out to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Amen. Okay. And for those of you who know, this is Uncle Bob's oldest boy right here. Okay. So Trey's going to get us started in chapter 29, verses 1 through 15.
These are the words of the covenant which Yahweh commanded Moshe to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, besides the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. And Moshe called all Israel and said to them, You yourselves saw all Yahweh did before your eyes in the land of Mitzrayim, to Pharaoh and to all the servants and to all his lands. Your eyes saw the great trials and signs and those great wonders. But Yahweh has not given you a heart to know and eyes to see and ears to hear till this day. And I had led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your garments have not worn out on you, and your sandals have not worn out on your feet. You ate no bread and drank no wine, nor strong drink, so that you might know that I am Yahweh your Elohim. And when you came to this place, Sion, sovereign of Heshbon, and hello? Well, I don't know why it stopped. Okay. Sovereign of Bashan came out against us to battle, and we struck them, and took their land and gave it as an inheritance to the Reubenites, and to the Gadites, and to half of the tribe of Manasseh. Therefore you shall guard the words of this covenant and do them, so that you prosper in all that you do. All of you are standing today before Yahweh your Elohim, your leaders, your tribes, your elders, and your officers, all the men of Israel, your little ones, your wives, and your sojourners, who is in the midst of your camp, from the one who cuts your wood to the one who draws your water, so that you should enter into covenant with Yahweh your Elohim and into his oath, which Yahweh your Elohim makes with you today, in order to establish you today as a people for himself, and he himself be your Elohim, as he has spoken to you, and as he has sworn to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzchak, to Yaakov. And not with you alone I am making this covenant and this oath, but with him who stands here with us today before Yahweh our Elohim, as well as with him who is not here today with us.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Trey. Okay, next reader, Robert. I'm sorry, let's get Randall in there. We can get Randall up here quickly. No, let's get Randall in because then Rabbi Tom's going to finish this off. Let's go ahead and go, Randall. That's okay. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Randall, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Randall, take us from verse 16 to the end of the chapter.
Okay. For you know how we dwelt in the land of Mitzrayim, and how we passed through the nations which you passed through. And you saw their abominations and their idols, wood and stone, silver and gold, which were with them. Lest there should be among you a man or woman or clan or tribe, whose heart turns away today from Yahuwah our Elohim, to go and serve the mighty ones of these nations, lest there should be among you a root-bearing bitterness or wormwood. And it shall be, when he hears the words of his curse, that he should bless himself in his heart, saying, I have peace, though I walk in the stubbornness of my heart, in order to add drunkenness to thirst. Yahweh would not forgive him, but rather the displeasure of Yahweh and his jealousy shall burn against that man, and every curse that is written in this book shall settle on him, and Yahuwah shall blot out his name from under the heavens. And Yahuwah shall separate him from for evil out of all the tribes of Yisrael, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in the book of the Torah. And the generation to come of your children who rise up after you, and the foreigner who comes from a far land, shall say, when they see the plagues of that land and the sicknesses which Yahuwah has sent into it, all its land is sulfur, salt, and burning. It is not sown, nor does it bear, nor does any grass grow there, like the overthrow of Sedom and Amorah, Admah and Tezboim, which Yahweh overthrew in his displeasure and his wrath. And all nations shall say, why has Yahweh done this to this land? What does the heat of this great displeasure mean? And it shall be said, because they have forsaken the covenant of Yahweh Elohim of their fathers, which he made with them when he brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim. And they went and served other mighty ones and bowed themselves to them, mighty ones that they did not know and that he had not given to them. Therefore the displeasure of Yahweh burned against this land, to bring on it every curse that is written in this book. And Yahweh uprooted them from their land in displeasure and in wrath and in great rage, and cast them into another land, as it is today. The secret matters belong to Yahweh our Elohim, but what is revealed belongs to us and to our children forever, to all the words of this Torah.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Randall. All right, Robert. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Robert who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Robert's going to read us chapter 30. Read the whole thing.
Okay. And it shall be when all these words come upon you, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before you, and you shall bring them back to your heart among all the nations where Yahweh your Elohim drives you, and shall turn back to Yahweh your Elohim and obey his voice, according to all that I command you today, with all your heart and with all your being and with all your children. Then Yahweh your Elohim shall turn back your captivity and shall have compassion on you, and he shall turn back and gather you from all the peoples where Yahweh your Elohim has scattered you. If any of you are driven out to the farthest parts under the heavens, from there Yahweh your Elohim does gather you, and from there he does take you. And Yahweh your Elohim shall bring you to the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. And he shall do good to you, and increase you more than your fathers. And Yahweh your Elohim shall circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed, to love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, so that you might live. And Yahweh your Elohim shall put all these curses on your enemies and on those who hate you, who persecuted you. And you shall turn back and obey the voice of Yahweh and do all his commands which I command you today. And Yahweh your Elohim shall make you have excess in all the work of your hand, in the fruit of your body, and in the fruit of your livestock, and in the fruit of your ground for good. For Yahweh turns back to rejoice over you for good, as he rejoiced over your fathers. If you obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim to guard his commands and his laws, which are written in this book of the Torah, if you turn back to Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, for this command which I am commanding you today, it is not too hard for you, nor is it far off. It is not in the heavens to say, who shall ascend into the heavens for us, and bring it to us, and cause us to hear it, so that we do it. nor is it beyond the sea to say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it to us and cause us to hear it, so that we do it. For the word is very near you, in your mouth and in your heart to do it. See, I have set before you today life and good, and death and evil. In that I am commanding you today to love Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways, and to guard his commands, and his laws, and his right rulings. And you shall live and increase, and Yahweh your Elohim shall bless you in the land which you go to possess. If your heart turns away and you do not obey, and shall be drawn away, and shall bow down to other mighty ones and serve them, I have declared to you today that you shall certainly perish. You shall not prolong your days in the land which you are passing over the Jordan to enter and possess. I have called the heavens and the earth as witnesses today against you. I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. Therefore you shall choose life, so that you live, both you and your seed, to love Yahweh your Elohim, to obey his voice and to cling to him, for he is your life and the length of your days, to dwell in the land which Yahweh swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzhak, and to Yaakov, to give them.
Amen, amen. Okay, thank you, Robert. Excellent job. Okay, next up. Shaquez. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shaquez, who's come up to you. Let me start again. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shaquez, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his her and her family. I'm having a problem today. I had a sip of that mint tea. I think there's some other stuff in there. I might have to just move that away. I'm going to do this a third time. You're getting 3 blessings. She's like, yeah. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shaquez, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Easy for me to say. Okay. Now you're going to go into chapter 31 and read verses 1 through 15.
And Moshe went and spoke these words to all Israel. And he said to them, I am 120 years old today. I am no longer able to go out and come in. And Yahweh has said to me, you do not pass over this Yarden. Yahweh your Elohim himself is passing over before you. He shall destroy these nations from before you, and you possess them. Yehoshua himself is passing over before you, as Yahweh has spoken. And Yahweh shall do to them as he did to Sihon and to Og, the sovereigns of the Amorites and their land, when he destroyed them. And Yahweh shall give them over to you, and you shall do to them according to all the command which I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear nor be afraid of them, for it is Yahweh your Elohim who is going with you. He does not fail you nor forsake you. And Moshe called Yehoshua and said to him before the eyes of all Israel, be strong and courageous, for you are going with this people to the land which Yahweh has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you are to let them inherit it. And it is Yahweh who is going before you. He himself is with you. He does not fail you nor forsake you. Do not fear nor be discouraged. And Moshe wrote this Torah and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who bore the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, and to all the elders of Israel. And Moshe commanded them, saying, at the end of 7 years, at the appointed time, the year of release, at the festival of Sukkot, when all Israel comes to appear before Yahweh your Elohim in the place which he chooses, read this Torah before all Israel in their hearing. Assemble the people, the men and the women and the little ones, and your sojourner who is within your gates, so that they hear, and so that they learn to fear Yahweh your Elohim, and guard to do all the words of this Torah. And their children who have not known it should hear and learn to fear Yahweh your Elohim, as long as you live in the land you are passing over the Yarden to possess. And Yahweh said to Moshe, see, The days have drawn near for you to die. Call Yehoshua and present yourselves in the tent of appointment so that I command him. And Moshe and Yehoshua went in and presented themselves in the tent of appointment. And Yahweh appeared at the tent in a column of a cloud, and the column of a cloud stood above the door of the tent.
Amen. Thank you. That was triple blessed. I really enjoyed that. All right, Ollie. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Ali, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now from verse 16 to the end of the chapter.
Thank you. And Yahweh said to Moshe, "See, you are about to sleep with your fathers, and this people shall rise and whore after the mighty ones of the strangers of the land into the midst of which they shall enter, and forsake me and break my covenant which I have made with them. Then my displeasure shall burn against them in that day, and I shall forsake them and hide my face from them, and they shall be consumed. And many evils and distresses shall come upon them, and it shall be said in that day, is it not because our Elohim is not in our midst that these evils have come upon us? And I shall certainly hide my face in that day, because of all the evil which they have done, for they shall turn to other mighty ones. And now write down this song for yourselves and teach it to the children of Israel. Put it in their mouths, so that this song is to me for a witness against the children of Israel. And I shall bring them to the land flowing with milk and honey, of which I swore to their fathers, and they shall eat and be satisfied and be fat. Then they shall turn to other mighty ones, and they shall serve them, and scorn me, and break my covenant. And it shall be, when many evils and distresses come upon them, that this song shall answer before them as a witness. For it is not to be forgotten in the mouths of their seed. For I know their thoughts, which they are performing today, even before I bring them to the land of which I swore to give them. And Moshe wrote this song the same day, and taught it to the children of Israel. And he commanded Yehoshua, son of Nun, and said, Be strong and courageous, for you are to bring the children of Israel into the land of which I swore to them, and I myself am with you. And it came to be, when Moshe had completed writing the words of this Torah in a book until their completion, that Moshe commanded the Levites, who bore the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, saying, Take this book of the Torah, and you shall place it beside the ark of the covenant of Yahweh your Elohim, and it shall be there as a witness against you. For I myself know your rebellion and your stiff neck. See, while I am still alive with you today, you have been rebellious against Yahweh, then how much more after my death? Assemble unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, so that I speak these words in their hearing and call the heavens and the earth to witness against them. For I know that after my death you shall do very corruptly and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you. And evil shall come to you in the latter days, because you do what is evil in the eyes of Yahweh, to provoke him through the work of your hands. So Moshe spoke in the hearing of all the assembly of Israel the words of this song till the completion.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Next up, thank you, Ali. Next up, we have Shira. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shira, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Oh, Shira is going to take us now we're in chapter 32 now, verses 1 through 18.
Give ear, O heavens, and let me speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. Let my instruction fall as rain, my speech drop down as dew, as fine rain on the tender plants, and as showers on the grass. For I proclaim the name of Yahweh. Ascribe greatness to our Elohim, the rock. His work is perfect, for all his ways are right ruling, an El of truth and without unrighteousness. Righteous and straight is he. A twisted and crooked generation has corrupted itself. Their blemish. They are not his children. Do you do this to Yahweh, O foolish and unwise people? Is he not your father who bought you, who created you and established you? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and let him show you, your elders, and let them say to you, when the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. For the portion of Yahweh is his people, Yaakov his allotted inheritance. He found him in a wilderness and in a wasted, howling desert. He encompassed him. He made him understand. He watched over him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirs up its nest, flutters over its young, spreading out its wings, taking them up, bearing them on its wings, Yahweh alone led him. And there was no strange mighty one with him. He made him ride in the heights of the earth, and he ate the fruit of the fields. He made him to draw honey from the rock and oil from the flinty rock, curds from the cattle and milk of the flock with fat of lambs and rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats with the choicest wheat. And you drank wine, the blood of grapes. But Yeshurun grew fat and kicked. You grew fat, you grew thick, you're covered with fat. So he forsook Eloah who made him and scorned the rock of his deliverance. They moved him to jealousy with foreign matters, with abominations they provoked him. They slaughtered to demons, not Eloah, mighty ones they did not know, new ones who came lately, which your fathers did not fear. You neglected the rock who brought you forth and forgot the El who fathered you.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Shira. Okay, fabulous. Okay, Shannon. Okay. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shannon, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Shannon's going to take us now from verse 19 to 35.
And Yahweh saw and despised because of the provocation of his sons and his daughters. And he said, let me hide my face from them. Let me see what their end is, for they are a perverse generation, children in whom there is no trusting. They made me jealous by what is not El. They provoked me with their worthless matters, but I make them jealous by those who are no people. I provoked them with a foolish nation, for a fire was kindled in my wrath, and burns to the bottom of Sheol, and consumes the earth in its increase, and sets on fire the foundations of the mountains. I gather evils upon them. I use up my arrows upon them, wasted by scarcity of food, and consumed by heat and bitter destruction. In the teeth of beasts I send upon them, with the poison of serpents and of the dust. The sword breathes from the outside, and fear from within, both young man and maiden, nursing child with a man of gray hairs. I said, I should blow them away. I should make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. If I did not fear the enemy's taunt, lest their adversaries misunderstand, lest they say, our hand is high, and Yahweh has not done all this. For they are a nation lost to counsel. There is no understanding in them. If they were wise, they would understand this. They would consider their latter end. How would one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight, unless the rock had sold them, and Yahweh had given them up? For the rock is not like our rock, even our enemies are judges. Their vine is of the vine of Sodom, in the fields of Amorah. Their grapes are grapes of gall, their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of serpents, and the fierce venom of cobras. Is it not stored up with me, sealed up among my treasures? Vengeance is mine, and repayment at the time their foot slips. For near is the day of their calamity, and the matters prepared are hastening to them.
Amen. Thank you, Shannon. Great job. All right, Tommy. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Tommy, who's come to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now from verse 36 to the end of the chapter.
For Yahweh rightly rules his people and has compassion on his servants. When he sees that their power is gone and there is no one remaining, shut up or at large, and he shall say, where are their mighty ones, the rock in whom they sought refuge? Who ate the fat of their slaughterings and drank the wine of their drink offering? Let them arise and help you. Let it be a hiding place for you. See now that I am he, and there is no Elohim besides me. I put to death and I make alive. I have wounded and I heal. And from my hand no one delivers. For I lift my hand to the heavens, and shall say, as I live forever, if I have sharpened my flashing sword, and my hand takes hold on judgment, I shall return vengeance to my enemies, and repay those who hate me. I make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword devours flesh, with the blood of the slain and the captives, from the long-haired enemy chiefs. O nations, acclaim his people, for he avenges the blood of his servants, and returns vengeance to his adversaries, and shall pardon his land, his people. Then Moshe came with Hoshea son of Nun, and spoke all the words of the song in the hearing of the people. And when Moshe ended speaking all these words to all Israel, he said to them, set your heart on all the words which I warn you today, so that you command your children to guard to do all the words of this Torah. For it is not a worthless word for you, because it is your life. And by this word you prolong your days on the soil, which you pass over the Yarden to possess. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe that same day, saying, go up this mountain of the Abiram, Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, which is opposite Gerizzim, and look at the land of Canaan, which I give to the children of Israel as a possession, and die on the mountain which you ascend, and be gathered to your people, as Aharon your brother died on Mount Hor, and was gathered to his people, because you trespassed against me in the midst of the children of Israel, at the waters of Meribah Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin, because you did not set me apart in the midst of the children of Israel. For you are to look at the land before you, but not enter there into the land which I am giving to the children of Israel.
Amen. Charlie? He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Charlie, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Charlie's going to take us to chapter 33 and read verses 1 through 17.
And this is the blessing which Moshe, the man of Elohim, blessed the children of Israel before his death. And he said, Yahweh came from Sinai and rose from Seir for them. He shone forth from Mount Paran and came with 10,000s of set-apart ones at his right hand, a law of fire for them. Indeed, he loves the peoples. All his set-apart ones are in your hand, and they sat down at your feet, receiving your words. Moshe commanded us a Torah, an inheritance of the assembly of Yaakov. And he was sovereign in Yeshurun when the heads of the people were gathered, the tribes of Israel. Let Reuben live and not die, and let his men be numbered. And this of Yehuda. And he said, Hear Yahweh, the voice of Yehuda, and bring him to his people. His hand shall fight for him, and you be a help against his enemies. And of Levi he said, Your Tumim and your Urim belong to your lovingly committed one, whom you tried at Massah, with whom you contended at the waters of Meribah, who said of his fathers and mother, I have not seen them, and he did not acknowledge his brothers or know his own children, for they have guarded your word and watched over your covenant. They teach your right rulings to Yaakov and your Torah to Israel. They put incense before you and a complete ascending offering on your slaughter place. O Yahweh, bless his strength and accept the works of his hands. Smite the loins of those who rise against him and of those who hate him, that they rise no more. Of Benjamin he said, Let the beloved of Yahweh dwell in safety by him, shielding him all the day as he dwells between his shoulders. And of Joseph he said, Blessed of Yahweh in his land, with the choices from the heavens, with the dew and the deep lying beneath, with the choice fruits of the sun, with the choice yield of the months, with the finest of the ancient mountains, with the choicest of everlasting hills, with the choicest of earth and all that fills it, and the good pleasure of him who dwelt in the bush. Let it come on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him who was separate from his brothers. His splendors is like a firstborn bull, and his horns are like the horns of the wild ox. With them he pushes the peoples to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh.
Amen. All right, thank you, Charlie. All right, Dennis. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Dennis, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Dennis is going to take us now from verse 18 to the end of the chapter.
And of Zebulun he said, Rejoice, O Zebulun, in your going out, and Issachar in your tents. They call peoples to the mountain. There they shall slaughterings of righteousness, for they draw from the riches of the seas and treasures hidden in the sand. And of Gad he said, Blessed is he who enlarges Gad. He dwells as a lion and shall tear off the arm, also the crown. And he chose the best for himself, and near the portion of the inscriber was hidden. And it came with the heads of the people, the righteousness of Yahweh he did, in his right rulings with Israel. And of Dan he said, Dan is a lion's cub that leaps from Bashan. And of Naphtali he said, O Naphtali, satisfied with pleasure and filled with the blessing of Yahweh, possess the west and the south. And of Asher he said, Asher is most blessed of sons. Let him be accepted by his brothers, and dip his foot in oil. Your sandals are iron and bronze, and your strength as your days. O Yeshurun, there is no one like El, riding the heavens to help you, and on the clouds in his excellency. The Elohim of old is a refuge, and beneath our everlasting arms. And he drives out the enemy from before you and says, Destroy. Thus Israel dwells in safety, the fountain of Jacob alone. In a land of grain and new wine, his heavens also drop down the dew. Blessed are you, O Israel, who is like you, a people saved by Yahweh, the shield of your help, and he who is the sword of your excellency. And your enemies are subdued for you, and you tread down their high places.
Amen, amen. Okay, thank you, Dennis. All right, our final reading will be Rabbi Tom. Okay, he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rabbi Tom, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Rabbi Tom is going to now take us into chapter 34 and read the entire chapter and close out not only the book of Devarim, but all of our readings today. And so we're going to go ahead and get him up here. Get him a microphone.
And Moshe went up from the desert plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite Jericho. And Yahweh showed him all the lands of Gilad as far as Dan, and all, and all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, and all the land of Yehudah as far as the western sea, and the Negev and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees as far as Zoar. And Yahweh said to him, "This is the land of which I spoke to Abraham, to Yitzhak, and to Yaakov, saying, to your seed I give it. I have let you look at it with your eyes, but you do not pass over there." And Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, died there in the land of Moab, according to the mouth of Yahweh. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab beyond Beth Peor. And no one knows his burial place to this day. And Moshe was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim, nor his freshness gone. And the children of Israel wept for Moshe in the desert plains of Moab 30 days. And the days of weeping and mourning for Moshe were completed. And Yehoshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom, for Moshe had laid his hands on him. And the children of Israel listened to him and did as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And since then no prophet has arisen in Israel like Moshe, whom Yahweh knew face to face. For all the signs and wonders which Yahweh sent him to do in the land of Mitzrayim before Pharaoh, and before all his servants, and in all his land, and for all that strong hand, and all the great fearsome deeds which Moshe did before the eyes of all Israel.
Amen. Amen. Okay, a tradition when we finish the readings of any of the 5 books is to say, ready? Chazak, chazak, v'nitzchazek. Be strong, and may we be strengthened. Amen. Okay, thank you to all the readers. Okay, the traditional blessing at the end. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chayei olam natah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Okay. You know what? Can I get that bench? I spent most of the last 9 days or 8 days standing. I'm going to try and see if I can sit by the podium here. All right, that works. Awesome. All right. I'm not sure how comfortable this is, but we'll figure it out. All right. Move up a little bit here. Got to make sure I'm close enough to the microphone. Okay. All right, so this is a time when I want to make sure we go through the announcements again, especially because we have a whole lot more people here than were here when we started. I have a couple of important ones for the parents with the children. All right, here we go. All right, if you have Katan A and Gadol B, Katan A and Gadol B, they will be meeting here in the Ark at 1:15 for afternoon activities. It's for the afternoon stuff. Katan A, Gadol B. For those that are watching online who are wondering what's with the Katan, Gadol, and all that stuff, Katan in Hebrew simply means little or small. Gadol means big, okay? So the smaller children we call Katan, and the older ones we call Gadol. Okay. Katan B will meet at IV5 at 1:30, and Gadol A will meet at IV3, okay? Ivy 5 and Ivy 3 at 1:30. All classes will be delivered to the cafeteria where the shuttle stops there at 5:30 after this afternoon's activities. Okay, a reminder again about today. So this afternoon after lunch, we're going to have part 2 of the Up to the Challenge teaching. So that's going to be fun. And then we'll have our dance class. I will be doing counseling. I've got a few people signed up. If you know who you are, just try to be here on time, 4 o'clock, 4:20, and 4:40. Tomorrow in the morning, and I know a lot of you have been late to things. You don't want to be late to this. You're going to miss some fabulous stuff. The children's presentation to show you all the things they learned this week about the 7 species, okay? And then after lunch, we have Holy Day services. A lot of people ask the question about dress protocol. You don't need to dress up necessarily for the morning presentation, but we do dress up for services, okay? With basic Sabbath wear. All right, and then, of course, for the end of all this, we end up getting to Monday night. Monday night, it's all over. Actually, right now, we're in the last day of Sukkot. So one thing's about to end, and the Shemini Atzeret, the assembly of the 8th day, or the 8th day assembly, starts tonight. And then tomorrow, after Holy Day services are over, we get to after dinner, sun goes down, it's pack it up, put everything away, be a good steward of the place that you were staying in, leave it in a reasonably good condition, and we need to be out of our rooms by 10. Okay, out of our rooms by 10 o'clock. I assume that's similar also for the campsites. Is that right, Stacia? Campsites have to be out at what time? Same thing, 10 o'clock? Okay, same time. Okay, so anybody who's staying on property or part of the property, we do have a few people in the campground as part of the property. Checkout is 10 a.m., okay? If you have any balances due, please see Stacia today. Okay, please see Stacia today. If you have not put in your Deuteronomy 16:16 offering, the box is in the back of the room. Okay, you might want to get that taken care of because today is the last day for that. Okay, because we get into the holy day tomorrow. And that means that we've already finished Sukkot, and it's a Sukkot commandment. Okay. What else? I think if you have excess second tithe, you would wait to do that. You can put that in the box tomorrow as part of your offering. And then you would leave that with us then. Okay, that should cover for the announcements. All right, let's go ahead and get into our discussion. Now, get this all put to the side. I like standing. So much for that. I don't know. I just think better when I stand. All right, that's better. It was worth a try, though. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we can start in chapter 29. We try to go chronologically. Hopefully you took some notes. You had some things to talk about. If we have time, we could also bring up stuff from anywhere in Deuteronomy as we go through this, but we'll see what we have. We got about around 2 hours, so we got some time, okay? So, that being said, if you have a comment or question, you already have a few people up here. You've kind of learned the routine. Come up to the front row. If you're on live stream, we've got Kurt and Rob manning the live stream desk, and so they'll take care of noting down your questions or comments. Okay, that's kind of what it is. Let's start off with Mr. Steve Waffle.
Okay, we're going to start right at 29:1. These are the words of the covenant which Yahweh commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, besides the covenant which he had made with them. And Moshe called all Israel and said to them, you yourselves saw that Yahweh before your eyes in the land of Mitzrayim to Pharaoh. Well, here, let me skip down. It said, your eyes saw great trials and signs and those great wonders. And I just kind of wanted to add a comment. How is it after all we've seen, we still lack the heart to do, lack the heart to know and eyes to see that Yahweh will do as promised? It is our lacking that we leave the covenant and attempt to retake sovereignty in order to get things to go as we see it should be, rather than allow him to act. Even after the Father gives us the eyes and heart, we still hold on to our own ways.
Amen. Amen. Well said. You know, because look, again, the context of the book, the entire book, is that it's got a few contexts. One context is this is a legal document. Okay, it's written very much in the ancient Near East legal document format as a contract, as a covenant between, in this case, Yahweh and his people. It's also very much a conviction letter. In other words, you need to be convicted of the fact that you were here, you were taken out of that place called Egypt, signs and wonders were done, you saw, you experienced, you have no excuse. It's a witness against them, okay? Now, by witness against, it's not like to accuse in a bad way. If they do the good things, it's a witness that they understood and they did what they were supposed to do. Unfortunately, we know that wasn't always the case. They didn't usually do what they were supposed to do for a very long period of time. They did, but not for very long. Okay, so that's another piece of the context. So we find that sprinkled in many, 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 many times throughout the book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, are the don't forget where you came from and what you saw and what you experienced, because that should help keep you, as Steve mentioned, grounded into the grounded in covenant, locked into the covenant. Of course, if you don't do it, you're likely, as Steve said, to walk away. So these are the warnings. A lot of warnings here in the book of Deuteronomy. Okay, James, go ahead.
Yeah, I got 29:19 into 20.
Okay, it's on my list.
This seems to basically be saying is basically the person who's become comfortable with the sin and no longer has regret, that's not going to be forgiven. Is that a proper understanding of what it's saying?
Say it again.
Person's become comfortable with
Yep.
sin and now is finding joy in sin is no longer going to be forgiven.
Okay, well, let's rephrase that because most people can't connect with that. People have been comfortable doing what they want to do that doesn't match up with what he says to do, and then they get all stubborn about it, okay? And this is like the idea. So it's basically the same thing you're saying. I'm just going to reword it because when you say the word sin, people are like, well, I don't get comfortable with sin. Well, you're not thinking it's sin at that point. You've now done a spin job on it to convince yourself it's okay. So let's switch it around to you've gotten comfortable doing the things that you like to do and convincing yourself that it's okay with your Creator. Because that's where it becomes like drunkenness. So that's a good one. And I've had that on my list because if you look at verse 24, it says, all the nations say, why has Yahweh done so to the land? What does this heat of his great displeasure mean? So it explains to you what it means coming after those verses, but really it goes back to verses 10 through 10 through 15. He says, look, all of you are standing here. You're in the leadership structures all there. Also the little ones, the wives, the children, the sojourner, everybody's here. And so that you should enter into covenant. So why is he displeased? Because as it plays through here, you see that he knows you're going to break it. And when you break it, there's going to be this great displeasure. And he's like, he's upset because I've shown you, I've demonstrated, you've heard my voice, you've seen my signs and wonders. What do I need to do? And this almost does go back to that Lazarus and the rich man thing. He says, look, I mean, even if we sent somebody back from the dead, you wouldn't listen. I mean, what is it going to take? Well, it's going to take you choosing to abdicate. That's what it's going to take. So the great displeasure that he does explain a little bit in verses 25 on, but what he mentioned in 24 is really has this great displeasure because they should have known better. They should have known better. I mean, look, he actually tells them in verse 4, he says, but Yahweh has not given you a heart to know and eyes to see and ears to hear till this day. He says, this day I'm explaining everything. Your eyes are being opened. Look, even Yeshua, spending all that time with the disciples, the apostles, still had to afterwards open their eyes and their ears and their hearts to receive all that he had not yet shared with them. So it's not to say that they didn't understand anything, but now they're having revealed the full picture, and they've had the eyes and the ears open to see everything. And then he said, and you're still going to choose to do this other stuff? You're going to choose self-sovereignty? You're going to choose pagan idolatry? You're going to serve other mighty ones? No wonder he's not happy. Okay? All right, next person. Santi?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Do you remember your Chinese when you read this portion? Okay, I have some comment on chapter 29, verse 5 and 6. It said, the garments have not worn out, sandals have not worn out. You ate, and they ate no bread and drink no wine nor strong drinks, so that you might know that I'm Elohim. Well, so that means the clothes and the shoes not worn out for how long? 40 years. Whose shoes can wear 40 years not worn out and clothes? What does it mean? Who is he? He can provide. So we should not worry, always provide out of our understanding. So we have to think about his faithfulness to us if we are faithful to him. Also, I have a comment on the last verse, 29.
Well, hold on. We're going to jump somewhere else. Just remember, that's exactly the kind of thing that Yeshua was talking about in Matthew 6, when he talks about, why do you worry about your clothing, about your food, and, verse 25. Because of this I say to you, do not worry about your life and what you shall eat or drink, or your body or what you shall put on. So he's actually hinting to something from Deuteronomy, which is also, by the way, from, Exodus. So you see this whole story play through. Actually, Deuteronomy 8 tells you also that their sandals didn't wear out and their clothing didn't wear out. But he talks about, it's not necessarily a literal so much as it's about the metaphor of that he will provide you what you need. You didn't have bread. You didn't have bread meaning food. He gave you manna. You didn't have wine or strong drink. You didn't have all these things, but yet you were fed and you drank what you needed, and you weren't left hungry or thirsty, and your clothes didn't wear out. So, excellent point. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to go to the last verse of this chapter, verse 29.
Yeah.
It said the secret matters belong to Yehovah. Okay, now you know Chinese. Elohim. But what is revealed belongs to us and to our children forever, to do all the words of this Torah. We want to seek his will. We want to know what do you want us to do? What is your plan in our life? But sometimes we go beyond the boundary. We want to find out more that we should know. But when we want to see his will, find his what we are doing or what we decide would be from him, then we have to know his word. And our children also would be encouraged to memorize and meditate his words, so that we know this is from him. If we pray, we want to find out, then what is his word? That's why we have to know and read and memorize. Also, we can seek counsel from the spiritual leader who know his word and and can interpret or explain his word with his wisdom. And also, we can see if this environment allows us to do certain things. Then the last portion is that all these match with our conviction. So we have to look at all those factors to make our decision to do something.
Amen. Okay, good job, Santi.
Thank you.
Okay, so verse 29 is a big one. This is funny how Norma's next after we do verse 29, because about those secret things that she wants to know. Not just you, everybody seems to want to know these things. Look, he says the important factor here is that the revealed things are so that we can do all the words of the Torah. Kind of connect the dots there. He says, but what is revealed belongs to us and to our children forever for the purpose of doing the Torah. That means he's not going to necessarily reveal everything about what he's doing or what he will be doing, but what you need to do. But he tells us these things that make us curious like crazy. We want to understand it. We want to know what he's planning and what he's doing. And he understands that because he wants you to know in advance that he is doing something so that when it does happen, you go, oh, that's what he was talking about. And he gave us a hint in advance and told us in advance that he would do it. So in 2020 hindsight, we look back at a lot of the prophecies and we could see, oh, he said it and then it happened. He said it and then it happened. But just remember, the secret stuff belongs to Yahweh. He will reveal it when and if he feels like revealing it, how he wants to do it, and all that other stuff. Why don't we spend most of our time, if not all of it, on the stuff that's revealed to us, that belongs to us? By belongs to us, meaning it was meant for you, not as opposed to now that you own it, you can tinker with it, twist it, bend it. No, but it's for you. It's basically saying it's for you. The revealed stuff is for you. The secret stuff is maybe for you, but he's going to reveal it as he wants to. It's his stuff. Okay? Amen. Okay, Norma.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning.
Yes, I know that eventually we will know everything. But in the meantime, I like to be curious.
That's good. I appreciate the curiosity. My only concern, not with you necessarily, is that people can tend to get obsessed and distracted by that enough that they forget to focus on the revealed stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that happened to me a long time ago. Okay, is that okay if I jump to 31?
By a long time ago, is that like when in the South they said it's been a minute? No, really, I had to learn that. I was sitting with somebody, and I mentioned somebody, and they said, well, yes, it's been a minute since I saw them last. A minute? In the South, that means like months, okay? So it's like saying it's been a while. Go ahead.
Okay, I had two things. 31:18.
We're still in 29.
That's why I said.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Jump to Torah.
Let's try and stick with 29 for a minute.
Can I make the other question?
Sure, if you got one that's closer to 29.
No, this is general.
Oh, general, okay.
Because this is part of the curiosity. I see that.
Part of what?
Curiosity.
Oh, curiosity. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Go ahead.
Sorry, my accent.
Okay.
What accent, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, let me make it more difficult.
All you guys talk funny.
Okay, can I make the question in Spanish then?
The way you said curiosity, I wouldn't understand it any better in Spanish, so it's okay.
You won.
You guys need to know, if you're going to zing, it's going to come back
I
just
know.
I've warned you in the past, but yet you seem to forget.
But I always say, be careful when you mess with a Latino woman.
Take your best shot.
Okay, let's do this.
Not afraid.
Well, I know.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The book was written on first person all the way until the end. So my question is, who ended the book? Because it was written on third person.
Well, it's not, well, I think there's other places where it sort of comes across as third person, where it tells you what Moses did, and he says, and what Yahweh did. And there's different places where it talks about things. Because like even you go back into chapter 27, it says, and Moshe with the elders of Israel commanded the people. And so, lots of places it comes across where he kind of switches voices. So it's not really clear how you want to interpret it that way, but the voice changes in terms of the way you read it, and from first person to third person, often all the way through. Okay, so we don't have a consistency in those kind of things. And so we were just told Moses wrote all the books and gave it to us, and he understood what was going to be in it. We wrote it down, and that was it. We don't have much else to go with.
Okay.
Anybody have an answer for that better than that? No? What? Okay. Okay, come up for a second, Raymond.
Not better, just supportive,
Okay.
right? Because we have, it tells us that Moshe completed writing all the words of this book of the Torah You know, and I think that the more familiar we get with Scripture and the more familiar we get with even just the blessings, like the blessings, when we start out with Baruch Atah, we're addressing him, you know, in one person, and then we switch to say who has this and who has the other thing, and we switch, and we go from the direct to the indirect, and we see that a lot within the blessings. We see that a lot within the Scriptures. I know that there's an idea out there that because the book goes to the point that Moshe dies, and then it continues beyond that, you know, how could he have written it all the way to the end? And we're all gonna run into this idea. If you haven't already, you will. But I think if we have difficulty with the idea that Moshe could write about the future, then we ought to just throw the whole thing out. Because there's a whole lot of Moshe writing about the future in the book, and it does change from, you know, first person to third person very frequently all the way throughout.
Amen. Okay. Excuse me.
And it's not my turn per se, but I have one from 29 when
Go ahead. Well, you're already up there, so might as well go for it.
All right. So when we were talking about the secret things and all that.
Shh, they're secret.
Okay. I'm going to say something about the secret things that shouldn't be a secret.
Okay.
You know, where it says us. You know, what's revealed belongs to us. And I want to take us, hopefully, a little bit out of our Western, modern, individualist, it's all about me and the Lord type mindset, and say where it's revealed to us. Let's just for a minute realize that this is meaningless and chaos if each of us is deciding what's revealed to me. Where it says revealed to us, I'm going to suggest that the intention has always been that since the covenant is with the community and not so much the individual, you know, the wedding is with the bride and the bridegroom, not with the fingernail, right?
Right.
Okay? You get to decide whether or not you want to be part of that community if he calls you and gives you the opportunity, but the covenant is with the group. So also is the idea of what's revealed versus what is not revealed. If each one of us is just deciding for ourselves what's revealed and not bringing that to our leadership to get the spirits tested, we have chaos, we have disorder, we're not getting that unity that is talked about in Ephesians 4:11 that you spent so much time, you know, beautifully making the point that we need these different kinds of roles in the body to bring us forward to that point of unity.
I like that he said beautifully bringing the point as opposed to beating it to death. That was very well played.
You know, there's some of these things. It's like if we're hitting them from the right angle, they're not being beat to death. It's more like life is being beat into us. You know, but I just want us because I think a lot of people read this 29:29 from a very Western, very individualist, very modern perspective, and they're like, "Yep, there's been some stuff revealed to me, all right." Mm-hmm. Well, I want you to be careful of that. I want you to be safe, and I want you to realize there's a reason why, you know, 1 John 4:1 was written the way that it is. Beloved, not every little wind that blows through your head is from Elohim. Amen. You know, and let's think about this. You know how to, like fresh come up out of the water, you know, after the laying on of hands, you know about as much about testing the spirits as a baby knows about what not to eat off the floor. Because that's what you are. That's what you are in that moment. And so if you want to know what's revealed, come to the us, not to the me. This is what's revealed is for all of us. And who knows that better than those who aren't picking the lint off the floor and eating it? You know, you go to your elders, you go to your shepherds, you go to your leaders, those who are responsible for taking the flock from one place to another and saying, whoa, 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 that weed will kill you. Do not eat that. And so there's that. And another thing about this whole Revelation thing, in this same chapter, I'd like us to think about the risks of thinking you have something revealed, you know, because chances are he's not working with each of us as directly and loudly as you might think, because we read in verse 3 about this, your eyes saw the great trials, the signs, and those great wonders. And think about the level of accountability that brought them. Okay, it's the degree of revelation brings the degree of accountability. We mess up like Nadav and Avihu every day, but we're not being struck dead for it. Why? Because they were so much closer to the presence. It spoke so much louder. It profaned the name so much more because of that. So, if you're wondering why today, if we're wondering why today we don't see so much of the great signs and the great wonders, and why we don't have such obvious revelation and visions and things that come to us, that's a mercy. That's a protection on us. Like when we're not ready, and I'm not saying those things don't happen anymore at all, but the fact that we see less of it than we might like, I'd like us to consider that as merciful, because you'll get what you're ready for. We'll get what we're ready for.
Amen. Amen. Okay, let me just say, first of all, that was very well said, and it inspired me to kind of take what he said and package a little piece there. I like the understanding that he sort of brought of the situational response. Why did Moses get so, some of you might think, wow, he just got angry for a moment and struck the rock. Why did he get such a severe punishment? Or why did Nadab and Abihu, who he mentioned, get such a strict, they got killed for bringing unauthorized fire. So why, and I think the answer that I saw in what, Raymond was saying is, it has to do with the us part and the witness and the accountability. This is why there's a double responsibility on the teacher. See, if you're just walking around as an individual in the body, and maybe you're wearing your seat, which does declare a certain amount of things, you have a limited responsibility and limited effect on everyone around you unless they perceive you as representing directly in authority the Creator. The more it's clear that you're representing authority, the more the swiftness and the punishment, and that's where the mercy comes in on us. Would that be kind of what you were saying? Okay? So you can see why Moses, who was standing in front of the people, clearly the absolute definite representative of the Almighty, and he says, you didn't set me apart. You represented me, and you did not set me apart. You can see that when Aaron and Moses went in, and then the fire came down and all this great spectacular stuff, clearly they represented Yah. And then when Aaron's sons went in there unauthorized, this was going to lead to a confusion. In other words, it would misrepresent to the people. If they went in and it seemed to go okay, the people would think it's okay. You see? So the level of influence in a positive way, the level of influence that you should have on people also brings the equal level of responsibility and the swiftness maybe of what you might receive if you were to go the wrong way. Hopefully that makes some sense. So you see what might look like harshness, because some people think, come on, Moses just had one bad moment? Well, he had lots of times where he struggled. But he did this in front of the people, standing in the place of Yah to bring a miracle about, and he didn't do it as instructed. You should be very happy that he's not using you to be, because I've had people tell me, well, I'm a prophet and he speaks to me and I'm supposed to tell you to do this stuff and that stuff. You do really want all that responsibility? Because he will hold you to the accountability of that level. That's why David was like, I'm not worried about Saul. The one who put him there will take him out. When it's time, whatever it is, it's just my job to stay out of his way. Until that happens. He said, I didn't put him there. See, a lot of you want to take leadership people out. Why? You didn't put them there. So stay out of their way, find someplace else to be, but it's not your job to take them down or have them removed or some other thing. Let's go to what was even said in the Brit Hadashah by a Jewish, well-represented teacher. This was, a highly regarded Gamaliel. And what he said about Yeshua, he says, look, if this is of Yah, you can't stop it. And if it's not, it'll be no big deal. It'll be taken care of. Why are you people worried about it? Oh, but we think we need to defend him. We need to get involved. We got to go all over Facebook and attack people and jump in. And, well, you know, you're misrepresenting. He'll fix that. Not just me, but all of us cannot say enough wrong things to the right people. They'll still get to where they need to go. We can't say enough right things to the wrong people. They still won't get there. It's not, the responsibility ultimately is not in your hands. Okay? The responsibility increases, though, in terms of how you'll be treated by him in judgment based on your level of responsibility. So when you do get more responsibility, to represent him correctly. Now notice, these people aren't getting in trouble because they didn't correct other people. Moses got in trouble for what he did. Nadab and Abihu got in trouble for what they did. Nobody else had to get involved. Yah took care of it himself. But yet we think we need to do these things. So, well played. Okay, who's next? Olivier. Yeah, good job. And by the way, some of you are still sitting here with verse 19 in your heads because you have no idea. You're thinking, well, I'm okay, but you're being stubborn. Watch out for that stubbornness, Israelites. Because some of you, because I'll go up to some of you, no, I'm okay, everything's fine, because I know you need to talk to me, but you won't talk to me. I have peace, stubborn. And I know why you're being stubborn, because you know if you talk to me, you might need to listen and hear and be convicted of something and do something. It's stubborn. You're adding drunkenness to thirst. Okay, Olivier.
Hi, Rabbi. Talking about that, my question was on 29:6, so to go back on what Santi already talked about, on also 29:19, talking about drunkenness. So 29:6 is talking about that you ate no bread and drank no wine nor strong drink, so that you might know that I am Yahweh your Elohim. So I see you had no bread, which is a basic need, so that they can know that he is Elohim. But what about wine and strong drink? And is it related to the drunkenness they talk about in 19?
Well, I mean, no. I don't think they're necessarily connected in that way. But look, he's trying to make a point about provision in verse 6. He said, because remember, the metaphors here with bread is that you did not do anything to sustain yourself. The metaphor with wine has to do with what? What do we normally think of as wine? Joy. Okay, rejoicing. He said, I didn't give you a place where you could just be, where you could just rejoice in all the things yourself, because you weren't in the land yet. You had to move, you were in the wilderness, all these kind of things, so that you could just focus. See, some of you wonder, why is Yahweh letting me suffer so much? Well, if he gave you everything, you'd probably get distracted, and you'd forget about him, which is Deuteronomy 8. And when you become wealthy and have built houses, and you've eaten and you're satisfied, and all that kind of stuff. So he's trying to tell you here, I didn't provide you all of those comforts on the journey so that you could focus on me, so that you would need me to provide those things. Okay, because that's the metaphor there for bread and wine. All right? Bread being, I didn't leave you in a place where you could just grow your own crops and take care of yourself and settle down and not need me. And I didn't give you the vineyards where you could make the wine, or the life where you could just rejoice, have the houses, and live for a long time so that you could just be satisfied. I've often said that being in ministry has a great advantage that you guys, to some degree, don't have. Of course, if you're struggling financially, maybe you do. But, in the ministry, there's no guarantee or assurance that anybody will ever send a check in, that anybody would ever put money in a box. So I have to live like this, where I rely on his benevolence, his provision for everything. Now, some ministries don't think that way, so they beg you for it. They guilt you into it. Without your help, nothing would be possible in this ministry. That's dumb. You can appreciate the support of the people. You know, one year, at the end of the year, I wanted to thank everybody who had supported what the Father was doing. But I wanted to be clear that I didn't want to say that sentence. Because if Yah wanted this to work, he would have found a way to do it without your help. He'd find somebody else's help. And if he didn't want it to work, all the help you sent wouldn't matter. It would crash anyway. So that's such a dumb sentence. This is my opinion. Well, without your support, this would not exist. Well, maybe that's why you keep begging for money, because it's not supposed to exist. I'm just... Because you should, you know, when you look in Scripture and when people were motivated, Moses had to stop them. They gave too much. See, we operate under that same understanding, that those whose hearts are moved, whether to either make an offering or to be obedient and do the tithing, whatever it is, that's what we rely on, those whose hearts are moved. We're not, now we do mention how you can do it. So that, because people have asked, well, how can I donate? Well, we have a box there and we have buttons on the website. So we tell people they exist. But we don't pass around the push key and we don't guilt people into making offerings. We don't give the sermon to try to make you, inspire you to have to do that. We don't play the reach into the pockets music, you know. Special music that unlocks the wallet, you know. You guys all know what I'm talking about. But that's really the whole thing, is that can we understand that when you are in that place where you're relying on him for paycheck to paycheck, when you're relying on him for all of your provision, that's actually a really good place if you just stop whining about it, because it helps you to know that he is Yahweh. Because yet, if you rely on him and you have confidence, you believe, and you stop whining about it, you'll notice that he provides. Lots of you still aren't tithing because you're afraid. Small percentage is because of greed. It's my money. I don't want to give it to anybody. But most of you that don't tithe, it's a fear thing. You have trouble paying your bills now. How are you going to pay it then? Talk to the people that they're knowing Yahweh because they're like, I don't know, but somehow I'm paying them. And easier than before. And I have less money. Makes no sense. But you're getting to know Yahweh better, aren't you? But you're afraid. And so what happens when we're afraid? Generally speaking, we jump into the driver's seat and take control. See, I was telling you, that's why I don't really want to say I pick on the blues, but when the blue, emotional, negative side grabs the wheel, it's almost always because there's a fear problem that something's not going to work, so I got to grab the wheel. Okay? And so that's what you see happening here. People don't do some of the things that Yahweh said. Well, I want to keep the Sabbath, but I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. Well, I want to stop doing Christmas, but my family's going to hate me. Well, I want to do... Stop being fearful. Why are you so afraid of everything? You need to know that he is Yahweh, your Elohim. That's why he gave them less. Until they got to know him, then he provided them with more. And you know what happened when they got more? Exactly what he said would happen. They got spoiled, and they didn't rely on him anymore. He warned them. So a lot of you think, oh, if he would just help me out and I could be wealthy and I could have this, would you really do all that you needed to do? Yahweh had me very poor and very humble during the journey into this because, and I was good at a lot of things, and I was probably the top producer in a lot of businesses that I was working in, but somehow, some way, it didn't work out because had I continued, and I would have been making six figures and all those kind of things, nice car. When my wife met me, I just bought a black Mustang leather convertible 5-speed. She thought I was just rocking it out with the money. He took that all away almost the day after we got married. He had a weird thing called El Nino. See, I do speak Spanish. In case it was part of your curiosity. About whether or not I speak Spanish. Okay, but El Nino is a weather pattern that, if you're a commodities trader, wrecks the whole predictable cycle of when the crops grow and how they grow and everything else. Most of my clients lost their shirts because they didn't really plan right for it, because it doesn't happen, on a predictable basis enough. And so they didn't know what to do to adjust to this El Nino weather pattern. And so what happened? I lost all of this all the money under management clients, no commissions, nobody was trading, and my income dropped from like $7,000 or $8,000 or $9,000 a month to like $1,500. Kind of like, well, there you go, like that. But that's because Yah knew if I kept going down that path, why would I go down this path and come into ministry and do all these things? I would have had the nice house, white picket fence, the kids, the whole thing, and that would have been it. But he took it all away so that I would not be successful in those things. Because as you see me relentlessly doing this, I relentlessly did that, or anything I did. And spending that amount of time, I wouldn't have spent the time to be able to do this. My wife thought I was cursed. I'd start a job, it would go great, and then it was always something weird. Something that you couldn't imagine happening that would like wreck the flow. And she's like, maybe you're cursed. And then we came to see, but it's 20/20 hindsight where you understand. Then you come to see, no, he's blessed me in this because this is where he wanted me to be. If he blessed me in that, I wouldn't be here. Amen? All right. So if he blesses you, well, thank you. Amen. And trust me, some of you think, well, how do I understand you guys? Look, I've been bankrupt twice. I had to take my family and move back into my parents' house. Ugh. Anybody knows what I'm talking about? If you ever had to do that, that is just not what you want to. I don't care how great your parents are. Adults, children should never be in their parents' house for more than a visit. It can't work to have that many adults in the same roof. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you are the children who have the adults move into your house, your parents. It doesn't work either way. It's really hard. So I've been through some of those sufferings that you guys, I've had to look at my bank account every day to make sure that nothing bounced. You know what I'm talking about, okay? I've had to tell my wife, you can't spend more than this amount on a daily basis without asking me, just not because you need permission, but just to make sure there's enough money for it. Small things we probably can handle, but you spend more than $100, call me first so I make sure that you can get it today and maybe you have to wait till tomorrow. I understand that. And so but again, it's because of that verse. So thank you, Olivier, for bringing that up, because it's the metaphor for I've provided you with very little, just what you needed so you'd know me, because if I provided you with abundance at that point, you would never have spent the focus knowing me. Plus, they needed a transition. You ever look at, just this hit me, you look at what happens to most people that come out of the quote-unquote the hood or the bad neighborhoods where they grew up and everybody was poor and there was drugs and all this other stuff, and all of a sudden they get a music contract or an athletic contract and they're getting paid millions. Does that usually go well? Why? Because they have no preparation to know how to handle that. So these slaves that came out of Egypt, if he handed them the abundant land flowing with milk and honey right away, which he actually tried to do, but they weren't ready for it, would they have been able to handle it, really? They were still being overrun by fear, which is why when they went in the land, they couldn't see what they needed to see. Because they would have had that opportunity. So I'm just saying, be glad he doesn't just throw a bunch of stuff at you. Most people, if not all, that have ever won lotteries end up broke within a few years, and their lives worse off than when they started. Families destroyed, marriages destroyed, all kinds of terrible things for wealth that you weren't prepared for. All right, that was a long-winded answer to that comment, but I just think it was very important. Okay, Shaquez, come on up. We're still in 29. If not, we can go into 30. Anybody else for 29? Okay, good. So let's stay in 29.
Am I on? Okay.
Yeah, if the light's on, it means the mute is on. So that's how you know. If the light is on, it's muted. Okay.
So you may have already answered my question.
Okay, good. Greg, you're next.
But 29 verses 2 through 4, I was struck by how Israel has seen all of these great wonders, but it wasn't until this day that he gave them a heart to know, eyes to see, and ears to hear. And I'm wondering, is that because they were just not ready?
Yeah, I mean, look, he did a certain amount of things with them when he pulled them out. Remember, he's also now talking to the younger generation. The older generation died in the wilderness. So he's saying, look, you guys were very young when all this happened. Some of you might not even remember it. You were so young. Some of you weren't even born. It's been 40 years. Some of you weren't even born when all that stuff happened. He said, now I'm revealing to you so you can understand what happened and how it affects you, what your parents and your grandparents went through when they came out of Egypt, etc. Because there's a whole generation different. This is 40 years. So a lot of them weren't even born when it happened. Okay? So, and the rest of them that were still, now the older adults here, the ones that were 19 and younger, because the 20 and overs are not there. So, yeah, this is, again, but he's helping them to see and understand another level of it, so to speak. This is how they get the depth of it that they weren't getting before. And by the way, I didn't get to say this, but when Raymond came up and was talking about, revealed through the us instead of the me, I want to take it into very specific detail of, today we have this real big problem with people feeling like we don't need teachers, the Ruach teaches us. And he was hinting at that, and he kind of said it, but I want to make it more clear. What that looks like today is the person walking around going, well, I don't need a teacher, I have the Ruach. Well, maybe the Ruach is just having a really bad hair day. I don't know, because everybody who says that is on a different page than everybody else that says that. Is the Ruach confused? No. Are the people saying that the Ruach is teaching them confused? Yes. So where do you find the safety? Through the structure, through the us, through the teaching that goes. Look, it says without vision the people perish, or the people get let loose. All right. The vision is not given to the people. The vision's, well, that's not true. It is given to the people through the one who's given the vision, who shares it with the people. And that's how it kind of disperses. Yeshua was the one given the vision. He shared it with the 12 and told them to go share the vision. Does that make sense? Okay? Yahweh didn't directly just share it with the 12 or the 70 with Moses or any of those things. He shared it with Moses. He shared it with Yeshua. He shared it with Abraham. Then he shared it with Isaac. Then he shared it with Jacob as it was passed down the line. And then they dispersed the vision. Because otherwise you have diverse or division. That's where division comes from. More than one vision. Because, I mean, it's hysterical and it's sad and it's confusing on all those levels to watch people claim that the Ruach just teaches us, and yet everyone claiming it, if you sat them in the same room and asked them a belief about A, B, C, or D, they would not agree. Maybe they're listening to a different Ruach. Okay, that could be the problem. And by the way, the likely Ruach they're listening to is the one that's called the Spirit in man. It's the filter through what I like, what I want, and my spin on it. Don't just think I was meaning Hasatan necessarily. You are quite capable of causing most of your own problems. That doesn't mean he doesn't have a role in all this, but he walks around with that Staples Easy button. You know what I'm saying? Because you make it really easy. He doesn't have to push real hard. We do, because we're so look, we're stubborn, and then we had the drunkenness to thirst. We do these things. And so maybe they're listening to a different spirit. This is where the problem is. Look, I've mentioned this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. I remember watching a program on YouTube by a ministry that now has over 100,000 followers. And they were doing a whole teaching against structure, against leadership. And I think I was actually one of the targets of the conversation specifically. But their whole argument was, we have the Ruach. We don't need teachers to teach us. The whole thing went about 2.5, almost 3 hours. They spent the last hour and a half answering everybody's question. I was like, really? Really? I thought, why wasn't your answer to every question, go home, the Ruach will answer it? Why would they answer a question? By the way, if the Ruach teaches you, why do you have questions? Why do you ask me questions? The Ruach teaches you, don't leave me alone. Make my job a whole lot easier. get up here, say a bunch of stuff, and let the Ruach do whatever else. Because that's not the way it works. If you've got questions, and I know you've prayed about them, you've asked the Ruach, you've asked the Father, you've asked everybody you can ask. So then you end up having to ask a person. And then amazingly, often enough, doesn't the person, if you go to an anointed appointment, doesn't the person have the answer you're looking for? It's still the Ruach, by the way. But the Ruach goes through a process and a protocol that you personally may not be really excited about. I would rather him just speak to me directly because I don't trust people. I get that. I don't trust anybody either. We've had experiences to make it hard for us to trust. But we have to learn to do it because that's where the answers come from. Amen? All right, next question. Okay, Greg?
Okay, Rabbi, I'm still in verse 4. And it's such a simple, straightforward, but Yahweh has not given you a heart to know and eyes to see and ears to hear till this day. And that so strongly reminded me of what you said during Up to the Challenge when you said, you start where you start.
Amen.
And when you start. And the picture of that to me shows our starting can start at the point where our hearts become lifted up and we forget to drop. And the response on our part at that time should be to humble, to remember. And that'll put us on an upward trend again.
Amen.
And then, then the goal is to trust the structure and first and foremost Elohim to find that balance. And it affects every thought, and it seems like it emphasizes even more how everything affects everything.
Amen.
It just
Amen.
Abba blows me away again.
Well, there you go. Look, and notice that we can get so much of that just out of one verse. It's a one verse that's actually one sentence. But just, kind of the thing that I would kind of put into two very important things. One, Yahweh, this is an important thing. Yahweh is the one that gives you the eyes to see and the ears to hear. He says, makes it clear. I haven't given you those things yet, and now I'm giving them to you. So those things are given by him, which means that you cannot open anybody's eyes. Just remember that when you're beating on your friends and becoming a Torah terrorist or whatever they call it, And you just think, or you call me up and say, Rabbi, I'm trying to have this debate with my friend. What verse can I use to blah, blah, blah? Stop it. There are no magic verses. If the Father has not revealed the Son or the Son has not revealed the Father in the correct and full way, you can't force that issue. Doesn't work that way. That's number one. Number two is, what Greg was talking about is that it's his timing. He says, I have not done it till this day. I will do it when I want, when it's the right time, at the right place, etc. When you need it. They needed it to walk across the Jordan into the land. They needed that level of understanding. And by the way, when he says these things, he's not talking about just the first time. There are many times where he'll reopen or open more your eyes or open more your ears. Because there's a lot of you that have listened to teachings and then have heard it again and then like, wait a minute, that makes sense now. Where the first time you're like, I don't know that I like this guy or I don't agree with him. Because you weren't ready at that point. You still were dealing with unlearning some stuff and letting go of some stuff. In other words, you had things filtering your hearing and your sight and kind of clouding your emotions in your heart. And you start to release some of those things. Now you can see and hear and understand. Gary, go ahead next. Nope, Norma. I'm sorry, Janet.
I know, we look like sisters, right? I just wanted to echo what you just said, Rabbi, because I have seen that process in my life when you said that he opens, in his mercy, he opened my eyes.
Yeah.
A few years ago, but once we started walking with you and getting your counsel, it's like it's more layer and another veil comes up and it's more, I can see more, and it's so beautiful. It's a beautiful process. With my husband, I know we're not supposed to do the mikvah every time, but we have been doing the mikvah since we started every feast. And I have to tell you this, when you do the blessing, every single time you come to me, he tells me exactly what I need to hear at the moment. Exactly. I mean, it's amazing. So I appreciate you so much, Rabbi.
Fantastic.
You're doing awesome.
Okay, so which one of your 7 questions do you want to ask?
I just have a follow-up question about the vision. When you said that the vision is given to the leaders, is that the same in the family, that the vision is just given to the husband?
It should be that way. And that's why actually one of the things that we do, okay, Manny, did we get the discipleship program back on the website yet? It's not on there yet. Okay. So at some point we'll get it back up there. We have a program that I have run some of the men through. I probably need to redo it so that I can take out from it all of the personal comments and interaction that the men that were in the class did. So I kind of limited who could access it because I told the guys in that class when we recorded it that they could feel free to be open and vulnerable because it would have a certain protective sort of limited viewership, So, but in that class, one of the things, it was kind of an introduction to discipleship. It wasn't really discipleship, but I had originally called it a discipleship program. But in essence, it really was just an introduction. But in that, in answering Janet's question, a big part of the program was to have the men come up with a vision for their family, for themselves, for their careers, for all of these things. And so developing that vision, because yes, the man should have the vision, okay? And a lot of times, though, when a man is reluctant to fully walk in his role, he's not thinking about the fact that he needs to access that vision that Abba gives him for his family, for his career, for his part in being a part of the body, etc. And so we cover a lot of those areas in our helping them to develop themselves a vision statement and a plan for their families and for their careers, for themselves, for their position within the vertical structure, etc. Okay, so this is something that we do. So I will work on, in my spare 30 seconds that I have every other month, I'll try to work on that. Okay, but it is something that is important. It's a good question. Okay, Gary. And Gary's been through that program.
Yes, and so I'm going into 30, so I don't, that's my
You're going to
question
chapter
or
30?
comment.
That's fine. We got to get there eventually. You can go back to 29. We can go to 30.
So I think Rabbi and Raymond, my big brother back here, I really enjoyed what you brought out there. And kind of to touch on what you brought there, the first day, I think it was on Tuesday, you had mentioned about people saying, we want to go deeper, we want to go deeper. I mean, I don't know what more you're wanting. If you were listening, there was some pretty deep stuff there, and I think it's, again, what you've talked about a lot of times, but the Gnosticism. We should be looking for the deeper application, the way we can apply things to our lives. But there was so much in what was stated there in those few comments of what you spoke about and what Raymond, so I really appreciate that. My question was on Deuteronomy 30:16. Let's see. So it says, and I am commanding you today, love Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways, guard his commandments and his laws and his right rulings, and you shall live and increase, and Yahweh your Elohim shall bless you in the land which you go to possess. So I know there's a lot of questions a couple times about, is the laws, the commands, the right rulings, is that all the same? Well, the first portion that we read on Tuesday, I had seen something in 6:17. It says, diligently guard the commands of Yahweh your Elohim, his witnesses, his laws, and which he has commanded you. So it got me to thinking that could this possibly be referring to Deuteronomy 17 as well? Because his right rulings, you're going to find, you have questions that you do not know how to handle. You're going to the leadership and asking for a ruling of how we would do this or that. And therefore, because it's coming through the leadership that he has established, and he is saying that's what you're to do and you're to act upon what they tell you, that is his right ruling. So maybe that's a way to think about it when we read those also, that it's, yes, it's what we read here, but there's the application thereof that is being giving as a ruling of how we do it when we go through leadership.
Yeah, no, I think there probably is a pattern to that, because he does tell the people when they go in Deuteronomy 17 leadership that you shall submit to the right rulings that they give. And of course, they're supposed to be doing it according to Torah. But I do want to talk a minute about this deep thing, because the Ruach seemed to give me a thought while you were speaking, Gary, about it. Okay, I have read Talmud. I have read the Shulchan Aruch. I have read some Kabbalah, some of the Kabbalistic stuff. I have read all these things. I understand Gematria to some degree. I understand the paleo picture language. And I can tell you something that is absolutely 100% factual and the truth. Zero of it is to give you a different understanding. All of it may help impress you more to have the already existent Peshat understanding. Do you understand what I'm saying here? It's not going to change that you have to not eat pork. It's not going to change that you have to keep feast days or keep the Sabbath or love your neighbor as yourself. So you guys who want to go deeper, you're missing. That's not what's deeper. So being wowed by taking a word in Hebrew and breaking the letters down, which only is there to endorse the point that it made before you broke the letters down. But now you're wowed. Why weren't you just wowed by the simplicity of what he said? Okay? And so you get all impressed with this deeper. Now, deeper is the stuff that works on you from a non-mechanical point of view. The part that makes you stubborn, the part that makes you lust after the flesh, the fleshly stuff, that's the deeper work. Yeshua gave them deeper work when he said, of old it says not to commit adultery. Well, I'm going to take that deeper. It doesn't change the fact that you're not supposed to commit adultery. But I'm going to deal with your emotional problem. You want to lust after the other person, think about them, well, then that's the same problem he's trying to tell you. That's deeper. He didn't use Gematria or Talmud or, Kabbalah or any of that stuff. He said, look, you got to understand the fullness of what's intended, that it's about a heart issue, a stubborn issue, an emotional issue, a lust, a flesh issue versus the below versus the above type of issue. But you guys are like, well, I want to go deeper. The deeper, if it does anything but just give you a more clear understanding of the not deeper, is wrong. Let's just call it out. The deeper, if it's going to give you any understanding that's different than the not deeper, is wrong. It's just more depths of ways to show you that that's what Yahweh always intended. Because he hides more levels of proof of the same thing that was in the simple in the deep. Does that make sense? All right, so maybe you just needed to hear that for a change. The deeper is not going to change his instructions. It's not going to change your obligations in covenant or his obligations in covenant. It will just give you more levels of saying, he said to do this, and in the actual word, it also says to do this. And then you break down the numbers, which break down to another thing, which actually says to do the same this. And then you sit there going, wow. And that is wow, don't get me wrong. But it doesn't change that all three of the things I just said are all endorsing the same simple point that was initially said by him. I mean, I can take you deeper into a Hebrew word, Bereshit, and show you almost the whole plan of everything. But the whole plan of everything is also explained everywhere else. So you didn't really need to know that Bereshit could be broken down in so many different ways. It's just cool. I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of neat and cool, and you get all excited about it. So understand that most of you want deeper for one of two reasons. You want to be distracted with what you think is cool and exciting, that sort of Gnostic thing, which distracts you from the fact that you're supposed to be focusing not on figuring out every detail of it, but just doing it. You have to understand all that deeper. The other reason is that you're hoping to find out that it's not exactly what it was in the simple, and you get some sort of excuse to do it different. Those are the two possibilities there, all right? It's simple. Okay, it's simple. Yeshua said some things that had wonderfully hidden stuff in it, but you know what? You never needed to hear it. Even though it was in some of the things he said, in the numbers of the fishes and the loaves and these other things, and there's all kinds of wonderful little hidden things, but you know what? They don't change anything. Now, those who studied that way and understood that way, they knew what he was talking about. So it helped endorse for them that what he said in the simple was true, was profound. So you want to dig deeper? Start looking internally. That's how we go deeper. We go more inside. Okay, and we're going to do that more this afternoon. All right, James, go ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi. I want to go deeper. I want to find what helps bring the fruit of the Spirit out of me. More of a general question. The book of chapter 30 is a lot about the blessings, and then it starts going into some of the cursings. All the blessings seem to have in the land connected to them.
Yep.
So these are a list of things that we probably we shouldn't expect unless we were in the land or Yahweh decides that we need it.
Two pieces, in the land and in covenant. Because when they were in the land and they broke covenant, they were eventually booted out of the land. But there was a period of time when they were in the land and they were still starting to receive curses because they were breaking covenant. So it's the combination of obedience in a place called the land. Now, I talked about this yesterday when we were doing the chapter 28, the blessings and curses. Yes, you can expect that he will do some wonderful things that you have no doubt were him doing it while you're journeying now into dispersion. But you can't count on the wordings of these blessings and say, I expect this from you because I'm keeping commandments, because that is only in the corporate observance as a nation in the land. So it's not that he doesn't do anything for you when you're not in the land. But when he says that there will be no barren among you, you can't stand on that if you've had fertility issues and say, well, I'm keeping Torah now he's going to give me a baby. Maybe, maybe not, but it has nothing to do with what he said. That promise was for corporate Israel in the land. Okay? So he might give you one. That might be a miracle intervention that he gives you. He might not. But you can't stand there and say, well, of course he's going to give me one. This is what he said. He promised that he'd give me one. That's not the promise that you're looking at there, okay? That's not the way it works. Okay, James.
Do you think that would be along the lines of how Scripture generally does things, is if we actually did this stuff as a community, even not in the land, it's more likely we would receive those blessings as a community?
Okay, so what is it almost comes into the same category of signs and wonders. What's the purpose of signs and wonders? Strength and belief. He will do, as an individual, just enough to help you with your vertical relationship. He will also do just enough for the community to endorse that the right thing is to be in community. I still don't think we can stand on a promise that was for the community in the land when we form a community of a bunch of believers that have come together. Should we see more blessings? I think probably we would see it. I think because we're coming together in a corporate way, but just enough to help endorse that we're doing something pleasing in his sight. And what that would look like doesn't mean it necessarily would look like the list that he gives us in Deuteronomy 28 or Leviticus 26 or with these places where he has the blessings laid out. Does that make sense? Okay.
Next one, I hope it's okay if I just jump into 31 real quick. But it's the reason why we're going through the book of Deuteronomy. It's because of verse 9 and 10. The way it reads, could that mean the first 5 books in whole?
It probably could mean that, but I'm saying is when I read the verse, the reason we do the readings to Deuteronomy is because of verse 11 when it says, and when all Israel comes to appear before Yahweh in this place, you're going to read this Torah before all Israel in their hearing. And it's specifically in verse 10 it says, at Sukkot. And so after reading that, I was inspired many years ago that when we started keeping Sukkot as a body and I was leading the Sukkot observances and we were hosting it, that we would read at least the book of Deuteronomy. Because absolutely we can be sure it's referring to reading the book of Deuteronomy. Does it mean Genesis through Deuteronomy? It's certainly possible. Because when we hear the word Torah spoken, by tradition, a Jewish person would think of the entirety of Genesis to Deuteronomy. This is called the Torah. It's also called the Chumash. Chumash means 5, or the 5 books of Moses. So yes, is he talking about all 5 books? It's certainly possible. We need a longer feast to read all 5 books, okay? Although we'll just cut out the shofar clinic and the dance classes and the up to the challenges and we'll just sit here all day. Which I don't mind. I think that'd be better than anything else we're doing anyway, okay? But yes, that's the verses in 31 that inspired what we're doing today, and that we do this every year because of what's read in verses 9 through 11, okay? All right, now, or 9 through 12, where it explains why they're doing it. Okay, before we go to the next person, let me just make sure we catch up on any more 29s that were sitting there. Robert, come up, because I don't want to start drifting too far out and we miss the 29s. So chapter 29, Robert still has something?
In verse 6, where you were talking about providing, how Yahweh provides everything for us. While you were saying that, it kind of dawned on me, we could take that all the way back to our birth. He provided us with sight. He provided us with hearing. He provided us with the ability to think. He could have just as easily created us to be a special needs person that couldn't do any of those things. So he provides us our talents. He provides us our abilities, which provide us our way of making money and being able to provide for ourselves. So everything that we have, literally, Yahweh gave us.
Amen.
So when I just came to know the Torah in January. This is only my second feast. When I was sitting in my room, I heard you talk about the second tithe and the third tithe, and I knew nothing about it. And I asked Mark about it, and he said, hey, here's a little understanding, go watch the teachings. I went and watched the teachings, and I felt compelled to start tithing correctly immediately. And because I did that, the Father allowed me to be here. Otherwise, I would not be able to afford that. And I did have to borrow from that money, in the beginning, but I made sure the Father got back every penny, because it took me a little while to be able to get that budget going. But I personally feel like if he gave us all of that, if I don't tithe to him the way he says to with what he gave me, then I feel like I'm stealing from him. That's the way that I look at it.
Amen.
And
actually with the second tithe, they're stealing from you.
Right.
Okay, now bear in mind, Robert is coming here from Thailand. Okay, so that's not cheap, but with the second tithe, he could afford to do it. And so Abba knows that we would need funding to keep these things, or if we didn't have it, we wouldn't do it. Just like he knows if he didn't make us keep the Sabbath, we wouldn't have chosen to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, once you started doing it, probably a lot of you, he never could pull it away from because you understand how much you need it. But initially, you did it because he said you had to. Because he knew we needed it, so he told us we need to do it. He knows we need to be here, so he says, look, you need to have that second tithe so you have no excuse not to be here. Because there's a bunch of people out there, and I'm not picking on them necessarily, who, well, actually, I will pick on them. Those of you out there that absolutely have enough of an income and a job, but you just didn't put your tithe away. Because some of you are just of the poor, and you couldn't afford to get here, and even if you tithed, you would have been like asking for benevolence, okay? But there are some people out there, you're not here because you just did not do the second tithe. And some of you are here because you realized you had missed other ones because of it. You finally started doing it, and you're excited to finally be able to come here because you did have the second tithe. So yeah, you're stealing from him, so to speak, with that first one, but really you're not hurting him. Same thing with the second one, you're only hurting you. Because he wants to bless you, and if you don't do it, the more the economy gets bad or it does any of those things, tithing is more important. You want every blessing you can have on your side when everybody else is struggling. Continue.
Okay, so now my question is about chapter 29, verse 29. I've been guilty of wanting to know, the deeper things and the secret things as well. But again, while we were talking about that, it dawned on me that it says the secret matters belong to Yahweh, our Elohim. So if the way that I understand this, and please correct me, and I know you will, but if that belongs to him and we desire those things, isn't that coveting what Yahweh has? Because he has not given that to us?
Sure, that could be a covetous thing.
And if so, then that would be being disobedient to the Father.
Exactly. And by the way, notice that he says that it can be revealed. There are things that he can reveal, but it doesn't say that it's revealed because you searched so hard and you went looking for it. Okay? It just says that if he chooses, he could reveal. He reveals stuff to me every time I get up here and open my mouth. And I'm saying things often that I've never said before, never thought before, because he chose at that moment to reveal it. Things that when I put the teachings together, I didn't think of. It hadn't been revealed to me at that moment. Because he teaches me, and that's why, like I said even yesterday, I had a bunch of bullet point notes that I never even looked at, which is no surprise. I'm not used to looking at notes. Because I like to, believe me, I've studied, so I'm not just coming up here and winging it. I kind of know where I'm going, but he's taught me to trust that if I open my mouth, he'll give me words. And so I often go back to a teaching and listen to it, and I think, oh, I don't even remember saying that, or oh, I didn't know that before I said it. Because there's been people who have asked me about something I've said in a teaching, and I'm like, I didn't remember saying that. I'll go back and realize, wait, I did say that. Because I try very much to be available and out of the way. Okay, so then that opens the door for him to reveal. So maybe that's part of your problem too. Maybe you got to just get off out of the way. And then maybe he might reveal something at some point, and be patient about it. But you know what? You could chase it around all you want, and if he's not ready to give it to you, you're just going to be spinning your wheels and frustrated and be begging for part 4 of Millennium and Kingdom. Sorry. I was challenged by the Spanish one over here, so I'm ready to go. All right, Norma, come up. Anybody else on 29? Wait a minute, come on up, Sherry. All right, Sherry, what do you got?
Okay, when I was reading Deuteronomy 29:4, and you were talking about how people were humbled, and that's when they had these blessings. I was thinking and I was thinking about the Holocaust victims. They followed the Torah and were humbled, but why they were not shown Messiah. And I was wondering, is it because the true Torah was not shown in Christianity by the Christians at that point? And also, is it because the Jews have not looked at the Messiah in a Torah fashion? Really, they were looking more at the fleshly type of Messiah that was shown around them. And so they didn't really trust who the Torah and the prophets revealed as being the Messiah, so that the scales came on their eyes because they rejected the fullness of God's word. And I was wondering, so we must keep our eyes on the word and not the world, lest we also fall away?
Okay, so I'm very, very, very reluctant to have an opinion as to why the Jews got involved in the Holocaust. That is something that can be very offensive and can be very wrong. But I will say this, though. I think it's an important point to make. There are many of them that ended up dead or in the camps and all that other stuff because they didn't pay attention to the signs. Many of them had time to leave. This is kind of the conversation I had in South Africa when I was visiting there almost 2 years ago now. And I said, for when I found out, because we don't know what's going on in other places. The U.S. does not give us news about terrible things happening in other countries. Just little tidbits of it, only if it's politically somehow provocative to other things going on here, okay? And so, like some of the stuff happening now in Hong Kong is getting some play. Not much, but getting some play. Some of the stuff that's happened in South America sometimes will get some play. A lot of stuff doesn't get play, though, because stuff has been going on in those places for a long, long time and didn't get any much airtime. And so, but when I found out what was going on from the people there, it hit me, and I believe it was of the Ruach. I said, you guys have to be careful that you don't become the modern-day Jews of the 1930s. Don't overstay. Get out. Instead of thinking, well, we'll be fine, we'll be fine. Like the people in the flood. Oh, we'll be fine. We don't need to worry about anything. Until finally the flood came, they're banging on the doors of the ark, let me in, let me in. And so that would be a good warning to us. Don't be so attached to where you are and your life where it is, because that was the problem. A lot of the Jews in Germany at the time were doing fairly well, and they'd been there generationally, and it was a lot to ask. Look, we travel a lot more freely than people did then. Travel is not like as easy as just, okay, I'm just going to get in a plane, go somewhere, and then fly back. It was a much bigger ordeal. You would go someplace, you would stay there a lot longer and then come back because it was far away to go. And so the idea of uprooting yourselves. Now, people were generationally in towns and in places. You know, a lot of us have lived in 5, 6 different places in only 40, 50 years of our lives. You know, it used to be, the saying is that the average person, this goes back almost a generation, never traveled more than so many miles from the house where they were born. That was in America. That was like a statistic. Most people just didn't do much traveling very far. Now everybody kind of goes everywhere. And so let that be a lesson to you. And this is not a promotion to say everybody needs to move to Cleveland or something. I'm just saying is you may need to move somewhere. I had a conversation about, maybe 7 or 8 years ago with a gentleman that's no longer with our ministry, but who was a part of the group. And he was really struggling for work. And I kept telling him, then move. If there's no work where you are, why are you being stubborn? Because he would tell me, 2 hours south of me, there's lots of work. So then go there. Because it was 3 hours. It was too far to drive all the time. So he would have to go there, stay in a hotel all week, and then come home. I said, if there's no work, move. Oh, but our family and this and that and blah, 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 blah. Why are we so attached? Maybe the Father wants to move you there because there's something going to happen there that you needed. This whole ministry thing was because I moved. Some of you have heard the story, maybe not. But I lived in Florida when this all started, and I met my wife and we got married. And then my wife's sister said she was going to move to Atlanta. My wife and her were close at the time, and so she said that she'd like to maybe move to Atlanta too. I was in between jobs. I could have said, no, I want to stay in Florida. I said, okay, let's go. So I went to Atlanta. From Atlanta, I had an opportunity eventually to end up in Knoxville. Knoxville's a whole lot closer to Atlanta than Florida. And so there was an opportunity to teach Torah and be in a ministry. But I only came into long story short, but I only came into contact with the guys in Knoxville because when I heard about a speaker that was going to be there that I wanted to hear and ask some questions, it was a reasonable drive, 3 hours from Atlanta. Then if I had heard about it when I was in Florida, I would have thought, no, I'm not driving all the way to Knoxville. I'm not flying there to hear this information I had questions about. And it was my introduction to the two-house understanding, okay? So, and I shouldn't say that. I had heard about it, and I wanted to hear the person had been teaching it and ask a bunch of questions. But I couldn't have done that if I hadn't moved. You see? So you got to be willing to move. That doesn't mean you need to come here, but you may need to go somewhere. So how attached do you get to things? Because a lot of the Jews that died could have moved. Okay? The signs were there. I mean, there was a long time when they were walking around with the stars on them and the identifiers on them and everything else before they were being gathered up and put into cattle cars and shipped off to concentration camps. I'm not blaming them for anything. It's an example for us. Because we can easily fall into that same trap. I don't want to move. Had a guy used to come to our services for week after week in Knoxville. He was so close with the group and he was an accountant. We started letting him handle our books to help us with the accounting. One day I said to him, because he was going to Sunday church too, I said, when are you going to make a decision here? You're sitting on the fence. He said, well, Yah just hasn't convicted me yet. Or I don't know, whatever he said. We were standing by the tape table. And we had Bibles on the tape table. I picked up the Bible, turned to the fourth commandment, and said, there, you're convicted. Or Yah hasn't released me yet, is what he said from the Sunday thing. There, you're released. And he was released. He stopped coming to us. Wrong choice. And kept going to the Sunday thing. It's hard to let go. So the lesson would be, and I appreciate that Sherry brought it up, the lesson really is, what are you holding on to? That's why they said the leaks. We can hold on to things that were even awful, but the familiar is always, it seems to be more comfortable than the unknown. Well, I don't know what it's going to be like if I move to that other place. Well, you already know where you are. It's challenging enough. You're not getting what you need there, so be willing to go. You got to go. I was really impressed. I moved at one point to Nevada. I was working in a place. I ran into somebody I had met that I knew lived in Florida. I said, what are you doing here? He says, I do new construction electrical work. I said, and this is where they're building everything. It was back in 90-something, and they were just building like crazy in that area. So I moved to where the work was. That's what you do. Anyway, Next, anybody else on 29? Okay, now back to 30. 30, going 30, 30. Okay. 31. Oh, wait, we got a 30 for the live stream. Norma, you're never going to get your chance. Everybody keeps jumping in front of you. All right, 30. Back to live stream.
All right. From Tony says, question, how does 30 verse 18 apply to us today?
30 verse 18. I've declared to you today that you shall certainly perish. You shall not prolong your days in the land which you are passing over the Jordan to pass. Okay. This is verse 17 is what he's really talking about, leading to the declaration of what would happen to them in verse 18, which is if your heart turns away and you do not obey and shall be drawn away and shall bow down to other mighty ones and serve them. Okay. I think the thing that we need to understand is that those who have their eyes open and ears open, as he tells us in chapter 29, you are at risk of simply perishing and not. The land is a metaphor for the kingdom. Okay? The land is simply a physical representation now of the kingdom. And so to go into the kingdom, you need to covenant and you need to have your heart right. And you're not. Now, if you turn away, instead of going into the kingdom, you get to do what? Perish. That's how it applies to us today. So you get to perish instead of live and having your days prolonged. See, when it talks about prolonging your days, it's talking about eternal life. It's another idiomatic statement to say what we're talking about here is the parable of the land and the people of Israel. The parable is talking about the forever kingdom and the children of Israel being his chosen people, being the whole world that hopefully comes and grafts in, at least hopefully a big chunk of them. Does that all make sense? Okay. Next question. Okay, now we're back to Norma finally. Yay! 30? Okay, come on up. Okay, Richard. Anybody else want to jump in front of Norma?
Good morning, Rabbi.
Yeah, now they're going to ask you what verse you want at 31. Maybe somebody has an earlier verse they want to jump in front of you. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Richard.
I'd like to revisit 30, verse 14.
Okay.
Where it ends with the to do it. And as I listened to all the comments on this, I had to really look at myself, and I said, when I want to go deeper, it is because I'm looking for a way, quote, my way, to spin on his way. The word that for me that I need to be is more. Because I like or desire more of what Yahweh has provided in my obedience to his word. Is it safe to say that I speak this way better than I do it? So I just had to think this out, and then I had to speak it out, because when I don't live it out, I turn out to not be the doer.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Wait a minute. You got something for chapter 30? All right, Pete, come on. This is classic. Okay.
So two things. First off, there's that pesky circumcision of the heart that comes up again. So it wasn't Paul that came up with that first.
Nope. We got that in verse 6.
But also in verse 7, where it talks about Yahweh your Elohim shall put all these curses on your enemies. So the blessings and cursings are not just limited to the covenant of people. It's not just limited to his people. But it says specifically on your enemies and those who hate you and persecute you. So it occurred to me that all the times when the people were sent out to conquer other cities and do that, those were people that were either occupying the land that was promised to Israel, or they were people who had attacked the people. He never really, it didn't seem to me that he ever told them to go out and go after people that were worshiping other mighty ones that weren't otherwise bothering anybody. There was a specific reason for that. And so the reason I say that is we're rapidly approaching the pagan seasons coming up, and I have to keep reminding myself that it's not up to me to challenge them on what they think. That's not for me to do. They're to do what they do. We're repeatedly reminded that we don't participate in what they do.
Amen. Amen. Okay, so it says here, Yahweh will put all the curses on your enemies and on those who hate you and persecute you. This is actually a fulfillment of a promise to Abraham. Chapter 12 of Genesis and verse 3, I shall bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. So now you see it actually playing out in corporate Israel. Okay, but that was a promise made to Abraham. All right? Okay. Chapter 31. Norma! Anybody else want to jump up?
I forgot my question.
There you go, next person. Very well played. Well played. Our next contestant.
Well, my question was stolen already from the person online. It's related.
I'm sure you'll find another one.
It's for sure. It's related to 31:18.
Okay.
That it says that I shall certainly hide my face in that day. Is that day is in reference to the same explanation that you gave a few teachings ago, that it can be on the day of judgment, or specifically on this time frame?
We're talking about a period of time.
Okay.
Okay, in the time that this is happening, in that time, I will certainly hide my face from them.
Okay.
Okay, because these things don't happen as a one-day event. People didn't mess it up over one day. He gives them a period of time to establish that that is absolutely the direction they are committed to going. And if they're definitely committed to going in that wrong direction, at some point he's going to hide his face, and these things are going to happen. Okay?
Okay. Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Putting all this idea together, the way that I see this, what is happening to me is when you were mentioning about do not have fear to make changes or move. Just trust Yahweh, your Elohim, with all your heart and love Him. This is in reference, and now I'm serious.
Yeah.
It's in reference to my background. I was in Chile, deep south, South America, and I was in Christianity for so many years, but I was still in deep sinning deeply. But I had the realization that I needed a change in my life or I would be lost forever. So I humbled myself, I begged, I almost died. And I asked my father, please take me out of here. But I was not specific. It was, whatever you want to do, do it, because I need you. 3 months later, I was coming to US when it was not in my mind whatsoever to get out of the country. I had no plan, I had no money, I just had a business and 3 children, separated, no child support, buying a home, responsible for everything. But I was dying in sin. And the Father heard me because I was at the edge of death, literally speaking. And He took me out of there 3 months later. He opened all the doors. At that time, 21 years ago, it was really difficult to obtain visa. He opened all the doors. He provided the money. He provided everything. 2 years later, I brought my children. 2 years later, I brought my parents. My life had a 100% change.
Amen.
Because of that, I found Torah. If I didn't humble myself at that time, probably I would be dead because I was suicidal. So that's the little story that I wanted to share.
Amen. And by the way, you can see how He knew, meaning our Creator, He knew with these little interventions that she would be doing this, that she would be ready to covenant, that she would have the heart that would work, that when He revealed Himself at that time, when she was ready, that she would be, so that was that idea of being called. But calling her in that mess where she was suicidal and would have killed herself and the whole thing was so bad, He knew He needed to bring her to a place, but she had to be willing to go too. She had to still make the decision. He didn't just pick her up and just whisk her off. You know, doors had to open, but she had to walk through them.
I had to beg.
Yeah.
I had to beg.
Fabulous story.
Do you allow me one more minute?
Sure.
Do you believe me?
Hey, I just liked that you're a good sport. We could have fun.
Well, I want to tell you this little thing. It's an analogy of, and I apply to my life, is that sometimes we cut the fruit tree to make a little dresser or a beautiful piece of art with our hands, or maybe an idol. But if we leave that fruit tree alone to fulfill the purpose of our Father, that fruit tree can bear so many fruit that can feed thousands. And what I wanted to do was to cut that tree. But I trusted him, I begged him, I humbled myself. He brought me to a different country, different culture. And now this tree is bearing fruits. And please don't think that I'm trying to bring glory to myself. That is not the intention. The intention is to exalt my Father, my Creator, that He brought me from Egypt. He brought me from there. And now all what I want to do is to walk in submission and serve Him. He gave me the opportunity, and probably you remember because I talked to you before about it, helping an orphanage with 40 kids in India, getting to that place, looking at their reality, collecting coins from people to help 40 children in India, 40 orphans, collecting money from my co-workers, friends, and people from churches to feed the homeless. During winter time, I hate cooking. I don't like to prepare meals. But I had the greatest joy on Sundays when I'm cooking alone all day for 200, 300 people every Sunday during winter time. And practically I had support from a church. No anymore. I cannot cook in that place anymore because my faith is different, I guess. And I cooked from my home last winter. I still have the blessing from my Father to continue doing that. Now I'm expecting for the answer of another place for a commercial kitchen that I will be renting, because I know that this is what my Father wants me to do. He brought me from there. I have to do what He wants me to do. And why I'm saying this is because I got that confirmation on the first day when I tried to do it 8 years ago. On a Sunday after Thanksgiving, I was really comfortable on my sofa, warm in my home. But I was still thinking about the homeless that I saw every morning when I was driving to work under the bridge. The snow was melting and all that cold water was getting under the cardboard beds that they had. At that time, I was helping a ministry to serve them on Fridays. So I knew them by name. I knew their stories. And I was really comfortable that Sunday, but something was bugging me and telling me, what about those people? What about those people? Yeah, I had my Thanksgiving dinner with my family, but what about them? What about them? So I got up, I got the leftovers, the turkey leftovers that I had in my fridge. I made soup, probably for 25 or 30 servings. Then I drove to the church to grab some spoons, napkins, and etc. Somebody went with me. They didn't let me go alone. And we set a little table. And when we put the stuff on the table, I looked and there was a line of like 50 people. And I started shaking more than now. I was shaking. I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have only this much. So I started serving. But it didn't even cross my mind to pray. I was just more afraid than faithful in that second. So then when I was serving the last one, the line was longer than before. And then I said, well, I know that I had to pray. That's the answer. So, Father, in the same way that you did it with the bread and the fish, I know that you can multiply this turkey soup. When I opened my eyes, two ladies were next to me, and they say, excuse me, we just had a Thanksgiving party with my friends and we have some leftovers. Can we give it to you? And I said, please bring it here. So they brought to our little table that was not big enough to contain trays and trays with turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, juice, pie, napkin, plates, spoons, forks, name it, everything. That day we fed more than 150 people on the street. And then I was, okay, thank you, Father. That was the answer. I don't like cooking, but this is what I will do.
Amen.
I didn't have resources, but now the account has $800 left from last year to keep doing this. And I don't do that to be recognized because I'm just working with the people on the street, and they are so thankful. They are so grateful. They bless me. They bless the group because I got to the point that I had 12 people helping doing this. And I'm thankful with my Father because he brought me out of there and brought me to this point where I can do something with almost nothing.
Amen. Amen. Great. And we are very blessed to now be helping to sponsor what Norma's doing. She needed a covering in order to be able to go into stores and ask them if they want to donate. And so we're providing that now for you. And not to take anything away from what she's doing, but we're very blessed that we have an opportunity to be connected with that in some way. Well, I appreciate the clap, but she was trying to say something.
Thank you. Yes, just a few weeks ago, I was talking with the lady that helped me and provide, because she has a ministry where she collects food from grocery stores, my dear friend Lisa Bickham, and she called me and she said, Norma, I have a blessing for you, because she's like that. She speaks like that. I said, what's up? I have 98 chickens for you. Woohoo! So my freezer now has 98 chickens ready to be cooked.
All right. And I think this is important because I think that, it's one thing, look, when we were very small, a lot of people said, well, we'd love to do something to help homeless or help whatever. And I'm like, that's great, but there's like 20 of us. And that's very humbling to realize that we had plenty of people with 20 of us because Norma's doing it by herself. But we thought of ourselves as, well, what can we do? There's 20 of us. But I think that it's important that we do think about how, and by the way, she's not making them sit there and have to listen to a message in order to get food. She's feeding them, okay? Okay, Shira.
Chapter 32?
Anybody else with 31? Okay, go to live stream first, because we haven't really gotten too many from there, and then we'll get a few other 31s to get to 32. And we only have about a half an hour more. Man, we really went through some stuff.
From Joy Baker, 31:28, says, how many elders were there? She's heard there were 2 for each tribe. It says, are these the 24 elders in Revelation 4:4?
Okay, it says, assemble unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, so that I speak. No, but look, this is not, see, we love to get into these things to try to answer these questions. He said, gather the leadership. Let's just keep it simple. Okay? Gather the leadership, because after all, I'm going to teach you this song, and you're going to have to teach it to everybody else. Gather the leadership. So he says, gather all the elders of their tribes and your officers, so that I speak these words in their hearing. Okay, Shira? Okay, wait, so who else had 31? Okay, Janet? We're going to have a separate session next feast for Janet and Norma.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, listen, I love that. Listen, we would have nothing to do if nobody asked questions. Having them up here and ask questions, I think it's great. And it gives me an opportunity to tease somebody, and I enjoy that. Okay.
No problem. 31:29.
Yeah.
At the second part, when it says, because you do what is evil in the eyes of Yahweh, and provoke him through the work of your hands. Initially, when I read that, I was thinking that it was referring to making idols, carve images, and that type of work of your hands. But then I have a second thought, and it could really mean anything that we do, right?
Right.
What
So let's retranslate. It says, to provoke him through the things that you do. See, in modern day English, that's what we would say. The phraseology at that time was through the works of the hands. No, it's through the things that you do. Through the things that you do, you provoke him. So that was a good conclusion that you came to. That maybe it wasn't just talking about. Now, idolatry and making idols is something that you can do, but the things that we do, we provoke him by doing things that we shouldn't be doing, or by not doing the things that we should be doing. Anybody else with 31? Gary. Let's see if we can knock these out here in the next 25 minutes.
Mine was just a quick comment, and I know a lot of debate goes on about the calendars and when the year starts and the feast days, and it's Aviv or if it's at Tishrei.
Don't you love the way he says it's a short comment and he's going to bring up a calendar thing?
But
something doesn't match up in that. But go ahead.
No, but as Rabbi says, you have to have all the pieces out of the box. Okay, and we know that in Vayikra 25. As Rabbi has taught of the calendar that's dealing with the annual things, the Shemitas and the Yovel. And in 31:10, it's interesting, people who have an issue with that never talk about this verse, but it actually starts in 9, and Moshe wrote this Torah and gave it in the priests and sons of Levi who bore the Ark of the Covenant and all the elders of Israel. And Moshe commanded them, saying, at the end of 7 years, at the appointed time, the year of release, at the festival of Sukkot. So 7 years ended at Sukkot, not in Aviv. And also in Shemot 34:22 is the other interesting one that would be problematic.
Shemot is Exodus what? 20?
34:22.
Okay.
And perform the festival of Shavuot for yourself and the first fruits of the wheat harvest and the festival of ingathering at the turn of the year.
Yep.
And why don't they address it? But it's not convenient, or they don't have all the pieces out. And so it was just one of those couple verses.
Okay, so in the Hebrew, it's not actually saying the turn of the year, but it's talking about the turning of a period of time. But yes. Okay, but that is a hint that's there, and it can be translated that way. But the whole thing is that there's lots of hints of these things everywhere. And I thank you, Gary, for bringing it up to endorse that there is more than one calendar running concurrently going on. How we count time as far as knowing when feast days are, and then how we count years is a whole different way. Okay, Shira, go ahead and come up. You've waited so patiently.
When's lunch? Okay.
27 minutes.
I would like to run something by you, Rabbi.
Yep.
That I've been wanting to for some time. In 32:15, and I don't want this to offend anybody. I'm not talking about your body shape, but Yeshurun grew fat and kicked. He grew fat. He grew thick. You're covered with fat. Now I understand that when Abba repeats stuff, there's an emphasis there. So I was thinking about this, sitting back there, and I made a connection with Acts 9 when the apostle Shaul, he was Shaul, he's on the road to Damascus, and Yeshua appears to him, knocks him off his horse, and says, "Why are you kicking against the prods?" And so the connection I made was that this usually fat is good, it's abundance, but in here it's not good because it leads them to forsake Yahweh. And so I'm connecting this with what Yeshua appeared to Paul and said to him, and I'm picturing the servant, the oxen who are plowing, And they're growing fat. They're not just instantly fat, but there's this and that and this and that. And they're getting to the place where they don't want to serve anymore. And so I appreciated Norma's testimony because Abba is putting such emphasis on serving him, pleasing him, obeying him, letting that be the focus of our lives. And I really appreciate what you said about simplicity. I think some of our, spiritual fat can be looking for these deeper things. And some of it can be the Christianity that we're still trying to come out of. Some of it can just be the distractions of the world around us. We're not in an agrarian society anymore. And so we have all this leisure time to watch TV, to go to this and that and entertain ourselves. And so I'm thinking of all these ways that we can spiritually become ponderous and rebellious. And so I just wanted to make that point that Father's working with me in my life. Try to simplify it at every level. Try to simplify it so that you have time and space that is dedicated to waiting on him, serving him, studying him. And I just want to thank you, Rabbi Steve, because, spiritually, I can feel the fat hanging off in places. And all of us would love to be able to go to the gym. And sitting under you is like going to the gym.
I appreciate that. All right, so when we're talking about going deeper, here's exactly so the point being made is that in their going through this place where they received, they had the cattle, the milk, the flocks, they had all this stuff, and they had all this abundance, then we're now trying to use different ways of understanding the metaphor to make the same point. You can make that point lots of ways. I mean, I can really simplify that and say, look, it's just an idiomatic phrase for spoiled. You guys are you've grown fat. You're spoiled, okay? I mean, I could go, a thought came to me, what about, looking at fat? Okay, the fat is something that we use to grease things. It's slippery. You can't really grab a hold of it. You become, I'm the potter and I can't really grab a hold of you. And thick, when something's thick, it's hard to maneuver, it's hard to stir. I can't really work with you. I mean, you can go to all these lengths to try to dig and maybe all of them or none of them are right, doesn't matter. But the whole point was, in receiving abundance, the point he's making is it puts you in a place where you now were thinking, I don't need, I can go look other ways. And we can see how can those images give you the same thought process. And so there's lots of ways that we can look at this. Look, I mean, you could say that thick could also be like thick-headed. And you grew thick. All right? I mean, but we're all saying the same thing with every one of these interpretations. That's the point I mean about digging deep. Okay? The simplicity of it is that they were spoiled. They had abundance, and with that abundance, they neglected to focus on where the abundance came from. And so then they drifted. He said, you grew fat, and you forsook Elohah. Why would you forsake your creator, your king? Well, because you're thinking, my hands and my strength. This is Deuteronomy 8 all over again. My hands, my strength, etc. created, and I don't need anybody. And so that's why, he uses these images. So again, that's another example of going deeper could look like. All we're doing is making lots of different ways to break down something to get to the same place that we got to simply. Okay, next. Thank you, Shira. Okay, next. And what was your name? Jamie.
Okay, I've come from a Christianity and a place of hurt.
Gotta bring it right up to you now.
Okay, I've come from Christianity and how they say things and trying to deal with your hurts and stuff. And this is kind of a trust issue for me when it comes to Yahweh, because you have in here that He loves you and He loves you and He loves you. But then you come across verses like in Deuteronomy 32, 39, and then it says, I have wounded and I have healed. And I've come through a lot of abuse. And my question is, is this just like him talking about he wounds just the covenanted? And if not, why did I have to go through that hurt if he loves me? Why did I have to suffer when I didn't understand Torah? And I wouldn't have understood his correction.
Okay, really good question. Not sure we have enough time to answer that, but I'm going to try, okay? I may actually cover that easier this afternoon. Let me try and answer your question, because this came up in another council session that I've had in the last couple of weeks as well. You can just lay the mic right back down there. I'm just going to go ahead and answer your question from here. First of all, what he's talking about scripturally is moving forward his plan. That doesn't mean everybody's individual life at all times is a part of that. And this is big picture stuff he's talking about here. Okay, I wound and I heal, and I have judgments, and I bring my vengeance quickly, and all these other verses that talk about that kind of stuff. Don't think of that for your life individually. For your life individually, and this is going to not necessarily bring comfort, but maybe it will. We have to remember, and if you came out of Christianity, you definitely have this problem, okay? You have been taught that the Father of all creation is somehow intimately involved in every aspect of your life. Anybody been taught that? And that's just not true. He's intimately aware of every aspect of your life, but we are no longer in the garden. He has allowed this world to be run by us and be messed up by the adversary, king of this world at the moment. And so he has to allow this world, to be blunt, to be awful, to suck. Time and chance happens to everybody. Now, remember, I also said he called you where you were, when you were, etc., knowing full well you've been through all of that stuff. But why do you allow it to happen? Why does he allow people to back their car over a kid? Why does he allow the accidents and things that happen that are just tremendously horrendous, that happen to just, there's a book that was written by a Jewish writer that, very profound book, said, why do, bad things happen to good people? Okay? Why do bad things happen to good people? It's a hard question. I had a real hard time with my belief in a creator being with that one question. Why does he allow all this awful stuff? And it wasn't until I understood that there's a plan. And in that plan, he needs to make a case to us very stubborn, self-sovereign people that we can't do this ourselves. That our way leads to ultimately, if he doesn't intervene, no flesh will be saved alive. Almost like he could say at the very end, well, hold on, we could have handled this. And he says, no, let's show you the videotape. Okay? This is mankind about to just go bang and nothing's left. We are that stubborn, prideful, self-sovereign that he has taken his hand off. And he talks about that like when he says, I will have to hide my face. Same idea. Meaning I'm not going to be that intimately involved in your everyday life. Bad things are going to happen to almost all of you at some point, and multiple times probably, because of the world we live in, not because our Creator is not paying attention. Same thing when we do the Passover every year. We say, Israel felt like he had forgotten them, but yet he hadn't forgotten. He was paying attention, but there was a purpose. Do we understand it? No. But he's got a plan. And in that plan, he has to, and I know it breaks his heart, allow horrific things to happen. Like the pogroms and the Holocaust, like the Inquisitions, like a lot of things that we see happening today with like radical Islam killing, all of these, like the stuff that happened with like the Khmer Rouge, just genocidal stuff, or the African genocidal stuff, or the Eastern, European genocidal stuff, all this terrible stuff that's happening, different groups hating different groups, doing atrocities like crazy. He has to allow it so that he can show you, this is what happens when I let you run yourselves. Now are you ready to let me take charge? None of that stuff happens when he's in charge. Does that answer the question a little bit? Okay. So be encouraged that he's absolutely aware of everything you're going through. And he has given you the strength to get past all that, because otherwise he wouldn't have called you in that place. You can make it from there. But sadly, he has to be strong enough, as much as he loves us, to allow these things to happen. because we're in a world that's awful, so that we would long for his world that won't be awful, that'll be wonderful. Why would you long for it if this world was wonderful? Amen? I mean, good question. Thank you. Okay. Okay, that was as short an answer as I could give, but that's hard to get. Okay? You know, why would he let the young children who get raped, or the young children that get kidnapped and sold, or the young children, I mean, these are like, all of us think of as the most horrific things. I mean, it's bad enough when adults get things done to them, but innocent children, what do they know? They've done nothing in their lives. Because it wants to show us this is what you guys are capable of without guidance, laws, instructions, Torah. Because the Torah would never let you do those horrible things. Okay, a world without Torah, you get all of that awful stuff, which is probably exactly the way it was before the flood. The man's mind was on and their heart was on doing evil continuously. All right, we got any more questions real quick? Okay, Randall? Because we got about 10 minutes.
This won't take that long.
Okay.
As we've been going through Deuteronomy, we've been seeing the name Yahushua a lot, and then we get to chapter 44, and it's Hosea, and then it goes back to, does he have a brother?
What are you talking about, chapter 34?
Chapter 32, verse 44. Then Moshe came up with Hoshea, son of Nun. But I'm just wondering if there's some significance about that, or if it's a typo.
It's, he's talking about the same person.
Right.
Okay.
So nothing significant about that, just...
I mean, I'm sure if we tried to dig deeper, we could find some hint at something that brings out something that we would have gotten otherwise anyway.
Right.
You know.
Well,
I mean, I never really noticed it to make an issue of it, so I wouldn't have a good answer for that.
Yeah, I also noticed too that when in the word when Yah is, well, later on when Yah is referring, he sometimes refers to Jacob, but he also refers to Israel, and it's always pointing in a different direction.
Well, I think sometimes when he does that, he's also trying to remind you that in case I ever use one or the other, you understand I'm talking about the same people.
Right.
Okay.
I always thought when he was talking about, when he was saying Jacob personally, that he was talking about Jacob personally, and then when he would mention Israel, then he's talking about.
No, there's other times he just says Yaakov and he means the people. But I mean, he kind of runs back and forth. He has reasons, I guess, and it kind of brings emphasis. Okay, but just like a lot of times he's talking about Joseph, but he doesn't talk about Joseph. He talks about Ephraim or Manasseh.
Right.
Okay, because that's how it kind of goes.
Because he said, they call the end times the time of Jacob's trouble, not the time of Israel's trouble.
Right.
So anyway.
Okay, and it's not Jacob personally that's having a problem. I mean, it's obviously the people. So, all right, thank you. All right, you have more on the live stream, or can I shotgun real quick here with a couple things? Go ahead and shotgun. Okay. All right, here we go. There is something that came up that I think is real important. I only have a few minutes. I'm only going to try and hit on probably just one thing. There are a couple of places where it talks about the book of the law. Ooh. All the people listening to those Melchizedekian teachings out there by Matthew Nolan and Dr. Dave Perry and everybody else that's out there with these book of the law things. All right? These people are using this idea of Melchizedek and Galatians and Hebrews to try to tell you that some of the law was done away with. They're not going to go all the way to Christianity and say all of it, but they'll say some of it was done away with because these laws were against you. Well, by the way, all of the law was given as witnesses against you. So maybe they were just leaving the wrong one of the words out. The law was witnesses against you, not that the laws were against you. But there were witnesses against you. And that is in the Deuteronomy readings. We have that. And that's in lots of places where Abba does things as a witness against you. I have these things so that you would know about them. But book of the law, and the idea of the Torah sort of, because also there's a place where it talks about book of the covenant. We're talking about the same thing. But let's understand that, okay, you have law, you break the law. This is what they're claiming. Follow me now. Because they're saying that this all came after the golden calf. There was law, the golden calf, they've got more law. And it's that additional law that's against them. Okay, you have the law. You break the law, which then brings you more law, which then you break the law, so that brings you less law. How does that make any sense? But that's what they're trying to sell you on. They broke the law, so they were punished and given more law. And so then, guess what? They broke the law. So now they're rewarded and given less law? You would think they would be given more law if that was actually the truth. But that's not what happened. There's the law, period. They broke it. They got punished for it. They were supposed to come back and keep the law. Okay? But just follow that simplicity of illogic that's what's going on there. They had the law. They did the golden calf. So they broke law. So Yahweh gave them more law. Then they broke law generationally all the way to Yeshua, and they took away the law. That would basically say that the law was the problem. No, we're the problem. The law is perfect. Even James tells us that. You know, look into the law, into the perfect Torah, the perfect law of Yahweh. Okay? So keep that in mind. Now, it also, the Adventists try to make this point. I want to be an equal opportunity finger pointer. The Adventists try to make the point that, well, there was the ceremonial laws, and then there was the Torah laws, which was the Ten Commandments, and the ones that were outside the ark were not the same as the ones that were inside the ark, and we don't have to do the ones outside the ark the same as the ones inside the ark. Hold on a second. The book that we talk about here, which was laid outside the ark as a witness against them, why was it outside the ark? Accessibility. If it was inside the ark, nobody ever get access to it. When do you ever hear people opening the ark to get anything out of it? The only time you hear anybody opening it is to put the stuff like the budding, the bowl of the manna, to put things in the ark. And then once that was done, you never hear it opened ever again. Do we? Do we ever hear it opened again? So no, they needed a copy. Okay, so there was a copy that was put, you have stuff that's in it, but then you have a copy outside that the priests needed to refer to. The kings needed to make a copy of their copy from, because they're supposed to make a copy from the one the priests have. So it's purely and simply, I know this is very deep, accessibility. It's just simple logic. Well, it wasn't as real and important and righteous as the stuff in the ark, so they kept it outside because it doesn't taint the stuff inside. What, are you kidding me? They needed access to it. Praise Yah, he said, and put this next to the ark, not because it's not as good as the stuff in the ark, but it has everything that's in the ark written about it in the book anyway, and this is what you need access to. So let's just keep that in mind, okay? And that's an excuse that the Adventists use, and a lot of groups have their reasons why they do less, or they do only some, okay? We keep the Sabbath. And we're vegetarians, which makes kashrut not a problem. But what about the rest of the law? They don't keep the feasts. Got a big Adventist church right down there in Chattanooga, actually in Collegedale. Got a big old Christmas tree in their lobby during the wintertime. Oh, yeah. And they do a real big sort of Messiah Sunday thing on Easter. Live people out there doing the whole, they show Messiah going through the whole process and going through the courts, and then, they actually do an enactment. But it's based on the whole Sunday rise thing, even though they're Sabbath keepers. But I'm just saying, these groups that are out there, they've got some things. Be aware of that, but be false prophet aware as well. Deuteronomy 13, are they leading you towards the fullness of Torah and Yahweh, or are they leading away from it? Leading you towards some of it doesn't get you like, an honorable mention or something. In some ways, it's worse because you think you've got what you need when you only have some of what you need. That's the awfulness of Christianity. People that are in there think they found what they needed when they only have the smallest of small bits of what they needed. So just keep that in mind. That whole book of law, book of the covenant, do not get wrapped up into that. There is important things to know about the Melchizedekian stuff. Listen to the 4 or 5 parts I did on the book of Hebrews in the covenant series, and I cover it pretty well so you understand what and who Melchizedek is and why it's relevant to you. Okay? Don't really have a lot of time to cover that other than that. Let's see. That'll just cover it. I think that's good, and we got about 5 minutes, and we can get people ready to go off to lunch. Okay, so let's get somebody to close us in prayer. Hands up. All right, where's the mic? Okay, let's bring it around to, let's see, wrap around this way towards the back, and we'll get it to Rick. All right, Rick's going to go ahead and close us in prayer, and then we'll dismiss for lunch. Go ahead, Rick.
Abba, Father, creator of heaven and earth, we thank you for your Torah. We thank you for your instruction. We thank you for a teacher who can make plain things that can seem confusing sometimes. We thank you for bringing us to this place where we can hear the Torah. We thank you for opening our eyes to see, our ears to hear, and our hearts to search out and welcome and receive and walk out your Torah. May we be blessed for doing so. May you bless the rest of this day. And we just praise you and honor you, and we ask all this in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen.
Amen. I mean, thank you. And by the way, when I say I need someone to close in prayer, the reality should be every man's hand should go up. Every one of you should be able to do what he just did. I'm not saying that you need to force your hand up the next time I ask, but you need to be planning to be ready for that at some point in the future. That is kind of one of the responsibilities of the men. That's a leading position, to pray on behalf of a group, as a covering for a group. And so that's why I say hands up. Men, hands up. Next time we got to get those hands up. I don't know what to say. Have you heard everybody pray? Nobody's perfect. Everybody trips over their tongue and starts to wonder what to say next. This is all normal stuff. Okay, now listen, when you've prayed 50,000 times, because everywhere you go, everybody wants you to pray, it becomes a little easier. So keep raising your hand. Every time you do it, it'll become a little easier. You'll get more comfortable to just let the words flow. But don't have a pride ego thing feeling, I'm going to embarrass myself. Nobody's going to feel it's embarrassing. They're going to be proud of you. Amen? Right? Okay? Ladies, if your husband ever raises his hand, you better be proud of him no matter what he does. Don't go back there going, what was that? You forgot what to say? Ladies, be proud of them. All right? Amen? Amen. Enjoy your lunch.